Chapter 31:25. Suyu secretly gripped the absolute heaven sword tightly and stayed close to the little skeleton. This fellow was too unreliable. Who knew when he would run off on his own? Master, how much do you distrust me? The little skeleton was speechless. Suyu glanced at him and said, "Don't talk." How could they be distracted in the midst of a battle between the strong men of the All Saints? Any careless movement could cost their lives. Crack! As expected, a slight cracking sound came from afar. Suyu's nerves tightened and he bellowed, "Get down." In fact, Suyu was not the only one who reacted. Most of the people who heard the sound immediately made defensive moves. Some took out defensive artifacts, some retreated, and some even tried to escape into the sky. The group of people immediately dispersed to protect themselves. After Suyu got down, the little skeleton followed suit. As it lay down, it said disapprovingly, "Do you have to be so dramatic? That was just a cracking sound. Was there a need to be so concerned?" However, as it was lying down, an invisible air current cut through the area where they were. The lion fur on the little skeleton's back was all cut off, along with some special parts of its body. The little skeleton's heart raced as he felt the cold and burning sensation at the same time. He was so frightened that he suddenly laid down on the ground. "Little master, help me take a look. Why do I feel like my body has become lighter?" So you turned to look and rolled his eyes. Yes, because your butt is gone. The air current just now had cut off half of the little skeleton's butt. Yes, it was still bleeding. The little skeleton immediately reached out to touch his back. His claws were covered in blood. He rolled his eyes. "Oh my God." Then his legs turned to jelly and he lay down on the ground, motionless. He panted, I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving even if you kill me." The little skeleton's body was so strong that ordinary forces could hardly hurt it. However, an unknown air current had almost killed it. If Suyu had not reminded him in time, the little skeleton would have been beheaded. However, in comparison, the little skeleton was still considered lucky. There were many people more unfortunate than it. When the air current calmed down, Suyu slowly got up and looked around. He could not help but sigh. The late ancient sages who had flown into the sky were all cut into pieces by the sudden air current, leaving only blood-stained clothes on the ground. As for those who used defensive artifacts, they were killed on the spot, and the defensive artifacts in their hands were broken in half. The scene became extremely bloody. In the blink of an eye, there were less than 10 people left from the 20 people who had come together. The casualties were so severe, but they had only just stepped into the battlefield. This caused many people to give up. "I quit." The peak great saint expert with the highest cultivation base covered his broken arm, which was bleeding nonstop, and announced his withdrawal with a gloomy face. After careful consideration, he finally chose not to take the risk. Even he, the one with the highest cultivation, was so shaken, let alone the others. Even the arrogant Dul lost the courage to continue forwards as he saw this scene. He grit his teeth and said, "Old demon immortal, you never said that the hunting process would be so dangerous." According to all the clues that old Mashian had provided, this myriad saint powerhouse was an arrow at the end of its flight. His strength was weak and his body was weak. He simply couldn't raise any waves. But now, it seemed like the other party possessed the mighty strength to crush all of them with a single move. This was not an action they could take part in. The little skeleton was too terrifying. The demon god shook off the dust on his body and said lightly, "Don't you think it's too late to leave now?" The sudden coldness in his tone and unusual attitude made many people feel that something was wrong, including Suyu. However, Suyu had been wary and suspicious when he saw the giant footprint. He had been paying attention to the demon god's attitude. Before she could finish her words, while others were still in shock, Suyu had already taken action. He grabbed the little skeleton's hair and growled, "Go!" The little skeleton was ready after Suyu's repeated reminders. Immediately, he leaped with Suyu to the back of the battlefield. The great Saint Peak, the strongest among them, retreated quickly, wanting to leave the battlefield where the little skeleton was fighting. The rest of the people retreated in panic. However, it was too late. The terrifying energy waves in all directions suddenly became violent after the demon god's voice fell. They quickly spread out and enveloped all four sides of the sky. Especially behind them, there were even more terrifying waves. Fortunately, the little skeleton reacted quickly and stopped in time to avoid bumping into the waves. Otherwise, he would have lost half his life. The Great St. Peak also reacted quickly and threw a doctrine artifact to ease his momentum, barely stopping before the waves hit him. However, the fluctuations instantly shattered the Dao tool that Xiao Chun tossed over. The people behind him stopped one after another, their expressions uncertain. Suyu turned around coldly and stared at the demon god. What do you mean? The changes in the waves must have something to do with the demon god. She must have a reason for trapping everyone here. The Great St. Peak was even more murderous. Old demon god, are you plotting against us? Among the crowd, only the demon god was exceptionally calm. She stood in place with her walking stick and said lightly, "You came here to fulfill the agreement, so you should fulfill it to the end. How can you give up halfway?" The Great St. Peak scolded, "This is such a dangerous adventure, and we can't back out." "Of course not." The demon god was calm and unafraid of the crowd's anger. "I have asked the people on the island if they want to continue. If they want to continue, they can't back out halfway." Such an unreasonable attitude naturally caused the crowd to be angry again. "Humph! If we don't leave, what can you do to us?" Du said angrily. They had traveled thousands of miles just to be plotted against. They should have known that the Heaven-Covering clan did not have good intentions when they invited them here. "Haha, young man, this is not the land of your sword saint tribe. This old man will not indulge you." The old Moshian's laughter fell. Then, a tyrannical fluctuation was activated once more, sweeping out in all directions. Everyone panicked and immediately dodged, and many of the waves were headed for Du. After the latter's expression changed continuously, he kept moving. However, there were too many waves chasing after him. No matter how he dodged, he could not completely avoid them. One of the waves was even more powerful than the others, and it reached Du's back. At this critical moment, Du saw a companion not far away. Without hesitation, he grabbed the companion and threw him behind him. Chapter 31:26. Creak. Ah! After a blood-curdling scream, the person who was thrown over was instantly chopped into pieces. After that, the waves gradually stopped and surrounded them again. The old demonic fairy stood outside the waves, a strange and arrogant smile on her face. "Everyone, if you think I can't do anything to you, I don't mind letting you try again." At this moment, the entire place fell into a deep silence. Many people were injured in the waves just now, and this was because the waves did not last for too long. If it had continued for a while longer, they would have been killed on the spot. The Great St. Peak powerhouse's eyes were gloomy as he asked in a low voice, "What do you want?" The old demonic fairy tapped her walking stick and said, "Haven't I told you many times? To hunt down the All Saints." In the past, they might have believed it, but after what happened just now, they would be as stupid as pigs if they still believed it. "With our strength, do you really think we stand a chance against the seriously injured All Saints?" The Great St. Peak powerhouse asked. "Moreover, since you can freely control such dangerous waves, isn't your strength more reliable than ours?" She had the ability to control waves, so why not use it to kill the All Saints? The destructive power of these waves was probably much stronger than their combined attack. Therefore, the old demonic fairy must be lying. You just need to listen to the arrangements, and you can live. Otherwise, you will end up like the corpses on the ground. The old demonic fairy did not explain further and changed his tone to one of threat. Everyone fell silent. Even the Great St. Peak powerhouse had nothing to say. Trapped in these waves, they could only be fish on the chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. But you can rest assured that as long as you listen to the arrangements, you will be spared in the end. The old demonic fairy calmly took out a small box made of black jade. There was a black liquid wriggling inside. Those who did not know would have thought it was some kind of creature. But everyone present was at least an ancient saint. How could they not feel the strong curse aura emanating from the black liquid? If they were not mistaken, It was all curses from the Gaetion clan, just like the curse that the Gaetion demon had once placed on Suyu. However, the power of the old demonic fairy's curse was much stronger than the one on Suyu's body. Even a great sage pinnacle powerhouse would be under the control of this person. Otherwise, they would definitely not be able to withstand the effects of the curse. In order for both sides to trust each other, I hope that everyone can be honest with each other and plant the golden silkworm curse on each other. The old demon immortal faintly smiled, but his smile was extremely strange. Golden silkworm spell? Hearing this, the expressions of several insiders changed. The great sage pinnacle powerhouse objected. Are you kidding me? You might as well kill me if you cast the golden silkworm curse on us. What was the golden silkworm curse? It was a special curse that was refined with Patriarch Gaetion's will. It contained the will of Patriarch of Gaetion. Once it was planted in a person's body, the curse would continue to grow over time, and the will in the curse would also continue to expand. In the end, when the curse developed to its limit, the consciousness inside would become so strong that it would devour the host's soul and replace the host's body, turning the host into one of Patriarch Gaetion's clones. However, the difference was that this clone did not require Patriarch Gaetion to cultivate on his own. Instead, it possessed the powers of the various clans in the world. Patriarch Gaetion had lived for countless years, and no one knew how many people he had used the golden silkworm curse to control. It was said that back then, an ancestor of the Gaetion clan managed to kill a 10,000 saint powerhouse by relying on endless clones. Unfortunately, after the battle, the 10,000 saint powerhouse's corpse disappeared, causing the Gaetion clan to be unable to successfully refine it into a clone. I swear to die, the insiders said resolutely. This curse sounded nice, but they were well aware of how cruel it was. Once the golden silkworm was born, the host would be annihilated. The old demon immortal wanted to use the golden silkworm curse to control their movements and control their life and death. However, if the old demon immortal refused to remove the curse after it was done, wouldn't they end up in the most miserable state? Therefore, no one would agree. Even if they died now, it was better than letting the Gaetion clan have it easy. The old demon immortal's face darkened. If you insist on refusing, I'll have no choice but to leave all of you here. However, everyone's resistance was unexpected. Be it the great sage pinnacle powerhouses or the ancient sage powerhouses, they would rather die than submit. If they were all going to die, why should they suffer the pain of the golden silkworm curse and then become the Gaetion clan's puppets? Rather than that, they might as well die in the shockwaves now and die painlessly. Seeing everyone's resistance, the old demon immortal didn't dare to kill them all. After all, he had spent a lot of effort and paid a price to rope them in. All right, I'll take a step back and not use the golden silkworm curse. I'll just use an ordinary curse. How about it? The old demon immortal asked. Everyone looked at each other and didn't respond. The old demon immortal snorted. Don't refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. If you don't even want to plant an ordinary curse, I'll be harming myself if I let you go. Rather than that, I might as well kill all of you here. In the end, it was the great sage powerhouse who spoke. He said, "What kind of curse is it? We have to make sure that the harm isn't that great." The old demon immortal's expression eased a little. He put away the golden silkworm curse and took out another transparent liquid. There was also something wriggling in it. The liquid was extremely transparent and didn't have any impurities. When the sun shone on it, it reflected a rainbow light. From its body, there wasn't much curse aura. It could be said that it was a relatively weak existence among curses. Dustless curse. The peak great sage powerhouse's expression eased a lot. The so-called dustless curse was a relatively low-level curse. It wasn't just the heaven-covering clan that knew it. Many other clans knew it. This curse wasn't too harmful to the body. It was just that after planting it, one's life would be controlled for a short period of time. But given time, it would dissolve on its own in 3 days at most. The dustless curse was a barely acceptable curse. If it was any lower, the old demon immortal wouldn't be willing to give in. Good, I can accept the dustless curse. The peak great sage powerhouse nodded. With him speaking, Everyone else nodded and chose to compromise. The old demon immortal's expression eased a lot. He smiled. That's more like it. I hope we can cooperate happily. Next, she flicked her finger and 9 drops of liquid flew into everyone's hands. Touch the abdomen and the curse will be planted, the old demon immortal said. After a while, the rest of the people planted the curse on their bodies, including the peak great sage powerhouses, Du Yu and Lu Xiaoyu. The old demon immortal nodded in satisfaction. Finally, when his gaze swept over Su Yu, he suddenly paused. Why don't you plant it? Chapter 31:27. Su Yu held the drop of liquid and said with a hint of hesitation, I already have the curse of your Heaven Guy clan on me. What's the point of putting another curse on me? He lifted up the front of his shirt, revealing a picture of an evil ghost on his chest. The old Maxian's face darkened. For the sake of fairness, everyone will do the same. Of course, you're no exception. As you said, since you already have a curse on you, what's the difference in putting another one on you? Su Yu pondered for a moment, nodded silently, and pressed the drop of liquid into his abdomen. After a sharp stab of pain, the liquid drilled into Su Yu's body. Seeing this, the old Maxian was finally relieved. With a smile, he waved his hand, and all the fluctuations in the sky dissipated. Everyone, I hope that our cooperation will be pleasant. After the deed is done, I will lift your curse, the old Maxian said. The rest of the people nodded. Only Su Yu knew that the old Maxian would not lift the curse. This curse was by no means a simple dustless curse. It was a curse even more terrifying than the golden silkworm curse. As for how Su Yu knew, it was because the blue heart puppet in his body had no reaction to the appearance of the golden silkworm curse. Instead, when the dustless curse appeared, it produced a strong reaction. Therefore, this was not a dustless curse. It must be an extremely terrifying curse. With so many people around, it was inconvenient for him to remind Su Yu, so he could only hide it in his heart. After the liquid entered, it immediately turned into a curse and spread throughout Su Yu's body. Su Yu remained calm and collected. At the same time, he operated the power of chaos and the power of the holy body to form an encirclement, trying to encircle the dustless curse. However, just as Su Yu expected, this curse was not the dustless curse at all, but an extremely terrifying curse. The interception of Su Yu's 2 forces was instantly broken by the curse, and it spread uncontrollably throughout his body. Seeing that he could not stop it, Su Yu hit his chest with his palm. Mirrorflower Heavenly Prince's heart was hit violently. A drop of blood gushed out of his heart and integrated into his blood vessels and limbs. Its appearance immediately blocked the rapid spread of the dustless curse. But this only treated the symptoms and not the root cause. As time passed, the dustless curse became stronger and stronger, but the pure chaos power in his blood was constantly being worn away. In just a few dozen breaths of time, the dustless curse broke through the obstruction of this drop of blood and continued to advance. The danger of the dustless curse was even fiercer than he imagined. If he still did not stop it, once the dustless curse completely spread, even a great firmament immortal would be unable to save him. At the critical moment, Su Yu had a thought. He hit his chest several times in succession and condensed a total of 3 drops of extremely pure heart blood. The appearance of the 3 drops not only stopped the spread of the curse, but also forced it back. It was forced from the internal organs to the abdomen, and from the abdomen, it condensed into a trace of liquid again. However, this could not be maintained for long. The power of the dustless curse was simply too great. It was rapidly depleting the power within the blood, causing it to quickly thin out. Soon, the dustless curse would break out again and invade Su Yu's body. At that moment, Su Yu decisively took out the holy infant fire seed, which had grown to the size of a fist, and stuck it to his abdomen. At the same time, Xiao Chan circulated his energy and moved the liquid enveloped by the heart blood out of his body, allowing the holy nascent flame seed to absorb it. Chi! In an instant, the holy nascent fire seed completely absorbed the cursed heart blood. With that, the curse in Su Yu's body was finally completely lifted. Looking at the holy infant fire seed again, it had expanded a little more. There was a massive shadow that was ramming back and forth within the fire seed, trying to rush out. That must be the curse. The holy infant fire seed emitted a warm flame. As it continued to burn, the massive shadow gradually calmed down and was slowly expelled. Compared to its previous frenzy, the curse was now quiet and docile, as if it had transformed from a wild beast into a domesticated animal. So you still had lingering fears. He knew that the mark of the Gaetion clan had been erased from the curse, and it had become an object without a master. Even Suyu could activate it at that moment. With a grasp of his palm, he caught the drop of liquid in his palm and sealed it properly. Everything had been resolved in silence, and no one had noticed anything at all. Even the old demon fairy had not noticed anything at all, because he would never have thought that someone would be able to lift the curse that he had placed on himself. Everyone, according to the news from my elder Gaetion, that strong man has been forced to the vicinity of Mount Duantian. Your task is to spread out and find him, the old demon fairy said. As soon as he said that, the crowd could not help but burst into an uproar. The expressions of the great saints changed drastically. You want us to spread out and find that strong man of all saints. Even if they joined forces, they would not be able to withstand a single glance from that strong man of all saints, let alone spread out and search for him. If they could not find him, then they would die without a doubt. They would not even need to escape. At that moment, no matter how stupid they were, they knew that from the beginning, the Gaetion clan had not been looking for helpers, but pawns to explore the way. They had been banished to the vicinity of Mount Duantian. If one of them died suddenly, the Gaetion clan would be able to detect it in advance, and they would be able to predict that it was the hiding place of the strong man of all saints. Old demon fairy, if you really want to cooperate with us, you should at least show some sincerity, right? You are clearly sending us to our deaths. Please forgive us for not agreeing, a woman of the ancient saint later stage said coldly. She happened to have cultivated a secret technique to resist curses. The dustless curse had been successfully suppressed after she had planted it. With a single thought, she could release the dustless curse from her body. The old demon fairy looked at her indifferently. Do you want to die? The woman of the ancient saint later stage slowly retreated with a cold expression. Others might be afraid of your curse, but I am not. To tell you the truth, I have already removed the curse. I will not accompany you. After saying that, she immediately soared into the sky and left before the other party's energy fluctuations could be activated. However, the old demon fairy stood on the spot and said calmly, "Is that so?" She gently snapped her fingers, and the woman who was already far away instantly fell from the sky with a miserable groan. Without waiting for him to land on the ground, his body released an incomparably bright light, obliterating him from the inside out. This scene caused everyone present to be extremely shocked. "What kind of curse did you plan on me?" The great saint later stage scolded. Her expression was extremely ugly. The others were even more panicked, and they all checked the condition of their bodies. The old demon fairy said calmly, "Of course it is the dustless curse, but there is something else in it." Everyone's heart completely sank when she said it herself. "You lied to me?" The great saint later stage powerhouse roared angrily. From the beginning, the old demon fairy did not expect them to obediently plant the terrifying golden silkworm curse. Instead, she deliberately let them bargain, and in the end, she had no choice but to compromise and use the dustless curse. Everyone present thought that they had fought for a better result by risking their lives, but in fact, the dustless curse contained something even more terrifying than the golden silkworm curse. The old demon fairy's eyes suddenly turned sharp, and she shot a glance at everyone present. "So what if I lied to you? Not satisfied? Then I will send you all on your way." End of this chapter. Chapter 31:28. The peak great sage powerhouse was angry, but he could not do anything. He could only clench his fists and glare. The others checked their bodies and were shocked to find that the seemingly peaceful dustless curse had unknowingly spread to every part of their bodies. Some of them tried to use their own strength to push out the dustless curse, but they found that it was already deeply rooted in their bodies. Ordinary strength not only could not shake it, but it would penetrate deeper and deeper into their bodies. This discovery caused everyone present to be horrified. "Old Moshian, speak. What curse did you place on us?" An exasperated young man could not help but shout. He would rather die than submit. "I'm telling you, if you want to use a despicable trick to control me, you can dream on." He waved his hand, and a Tao artifact sword was placed across his neck. "If you don't speak clearly, then take my corpse away." But the old Moshian calmly said, "Young man, this old woman never dreams. It is very easy to control you." She grinned, a very strange smile. Without any movement, the young man who threatened her with his life suddenly trembled and then calmed down. But his eyes had lost consciousness and were empty. "Do you still want to die?" the old Moshian asked. The young man said, "I don't want to die." "What if I let you die?" the old Moshian asked. The young man was like a puppet, mechanically saying, "Then I will die." The old Moshian nodded. "Take out your heart and give it to me." The young man did not hesitate. He raised the sword in his hand and stabbed his chest. Then he ruthlessly pulled out a beating heart and gave it to the old Moshian. The old Moshian grasped the heart and looked at the others with a warm smile. "Everyone, who else wants to give me their heart? This old woman will not refuse." With that, there was a muffled sound as the old Moshian crushed the heart. Blood splattered on the ground, forming a strong contrast with her kind and warm smile. Many people fiercely swallowed, their faces turning deathly white. They suddenly realized that they had been hit by a curse even more terrifying than the golden silkworm curse. The golden silkworm curse needed time to brew before it could control the host. But this dustless curse did not need time at all. Once it was planted, the other party could control them at any time. So much so that he was willing to take out his own heart and give it to the old demon immortal. The bloody scene caused their hearts to sink to the bottom. As they were falling into despair, the old demon immortal said, "But you can rest assured that I have placed an even fiercer curse on you. This is only to make you work harder, understand?" They certainly understood that the old demon immortal was only comforting them. Once the deed was done, they would lose themselves and become puppets. Only, until the final moment, no one was willing to make a pointless sacrifice. They all hoped to find an opportunity to break free from the dustless curse. "Are you all deaf? How come no one is answering?" The old demon immortal's warm smile became abnormally cold as he looked around at everyone present. Everyone shivered in fear and answered in unison, "We understand." Even that peak Great Saint Powerhouse had no choice but to lower his head in the end. Everyone's face was covered with dark clouds, and their hearts were heavy. "Then let's go." With the old demon immortal leading the way, no one dared to disobey. The deeper they went, the more dangerous it was. The residual energy from the battle of the myriad saint powerhouses rampaged through this area. If they were the least bit careless, they could be annihilated. At first, the old demon immortal was able to control the energy fluctuations here. But the further they went, the stronger the energy fluctuations became. Even she could not control them. She began to be more cautious, not daring to be careless. Finally, they arrived at an incomparably cold area. Fog filled the skies, and they could not see the end of the world. They could only vaguely see the 9 giant blades piercing straight into the clouds. That was the Broken Sky Mountain region. The legendary 10,000 Saint Expert was hidden among them. "All of you wait here. Do not move around." The old demon immortal's expression was solemn. She seemed to sense something and walked in a certain direction, leaving everyone behind. As soon as she left, the crowd began to stir. Many people began to ask questions around the peak Great Saint Powerhouse. "Senior Shio, what should we do?" "That's right. Senior Shio, do you have a way to dispel the curse and save our lives?" The person called Senior Shio sat on a boulder, completely ignoring the questions of the outside world. His expression had already answered everything. If he could dispel the curse in his body, would he need to be manipulated by others and come to this place? Only a few people were independent. For example, Du Yu and Lu Xiaoyu. The two of them were tightly cuddled together, leaning against a giant beast bone. "Senior brother, I'm scared." Lu Xiaoyu leaned weakly in his arms. Yu caressed her back. Although his expression was dark, he was still calm. "Don't worry, there will be a turn for the better." As a member of the Sword Saint race, since he dared to come here, he naturally had something to rely on. He would not die here so easily. However, we should rope in some people. Yu pondered, if we split up to search for that myriad saint powerhouse, we will definitely die. They had personally experienced how terrifying a myriad saint powerhouse was. If they did not find him, it would be a blessing. If they did, they would die without a doubt. Therefore, it was best for them to stick together and cooperate with each other. That way, they would have a chance of survival. Lu Xiaoyu looked around at the others and agreed. "And leave it to me." She flashed a pure and lovely smile and went to strike up a conversation with her restless target. At this time, everyone was in a state of panic. Most of them had lost their backbone. Yu, a great saint, had thrown an olive branch at them, and they were naturally tempted. In a short while, 3 to 5 people agreed. Lu Xiaoyu revealed a relaxed expression. Suddenly, her gaze fell on Suyu. After a moment of contemplation, she came in front of Suyu. Suyu sensed something and looked up expressionlessly. Her jade face was as cold as steel, devoid of emotion. He was about to ask what she wanted when Lu Xiaoyu crossed her arms in front of her chest and said in a condescending manner, "Stop dreaming. We don't need an ancient saint to join the team." It turned out that she had mistakenly thought that Suyu had such an idea. "I came to ask you if you have seen Senior Yin," Lu Xiaoyu asked. Suyu did not even know who Senior Yin was. Even if he knew, why did he have to answer her? "I don't know," Suyu said lightly. Lu Xiaoyu snorted. "Stop pretending. Senior Yin left the team midway. He must have gone back to look for you." Only then did Suyu understand that the so-called Senior Yin was probably the fiery, brawny man who had gone back to attack him. It was a pity that he was not as skilled as Suyu and was killed by Suyu. He had even snatched away the extremely precious, holy infant fire seed. "I don't know," Suyu answered. Lu Xiaoyu stomped her foot and said in disgust, "You are really annoying." Suyu chuckled. "Do I hate it?" That was not what she had said when she thought Suyu was an expert. Chapter 31:29. Just wait to die. Don't expect us to save you. Lu Xiaoyu arrogantly returned to Du Yu's side and whispered something to her. The latter cast a sidelong glance at Suyu, casting a murderous look. Suyu did not care at all. He was counting all kinds of things to prepare for the search later. A moment later, Suyu's heart skipped a beat. He looked up at the sky in the distance and stood up abruptly. Following closely behind him was the strong man at the peak of the great saint. The latter also sensed something and squinted at the sky. Yu Guang shot a deep look at Suyu, his eyes revealing a profound look. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The air currents of heaven and earth swirled, and the massive energy waves seemed to be repelled by something, scattering in all directions. The rest of the people also sensed it and stood up, looking vigilant. Gradually, 2 strange rays of light, one gold and one black, came side by side, arriving in front of them. Behind them was the old Maxian. However, she looked humble and did not even dare to breathe, as if she was afraid of offending the 2 people in front of her. Rumble. Like thunder, the 2 appeared in front of everyone in a flash. One of them had long, greasy, and dirty hair that reached her heels. It was like a dirty cloak covering most of her body. At the same time, her body emitted a strong stench, as if she had not bathed for many years. Her face was also faintly discernible in her messy hair, like a ghost with an unknown face. The most shocking thing was that she had a curse aura that was much stronger than the golden silkworm curse. In addition to the old demon immortal standing behind him, it was easy to guess who he was. Ancestor Guy Tion, an ancient monster who was good at curses and whose cultivation had reached the peak of the great saint level, half a step away from becoming a 10,000 saint. Swish! Beside him was an upright and valiant being. His face was upright, and his body was full of righteousness. He wore a bright red cloak, his black hair flying in the wind, and his eyes looking at the world. The most eye-catching thing was that he was from the human race. His invincible aura was terrifying. Lu Xiaoyu involuntarily leaned towards Diyu, her eyes full of fear. His name also shook the past and the present, becoming famous in the nine-star civilization. He was the Reincarnation King, the Reincarnation Emperor, the King of the Human Alliance. "This is the person you found?" Patriarch Gaitian said hoarsely. Curse aura gushed out of his body as he breathed, making everyone feel suffocated. Just how many incomparably powerful curses were hidden in this person's body? If he wanted to kill everyone present, a single glance would be enough. This made them even more cautious. They even controlled their breathing, lest they were noticed by Patriarch Gaitian. Old Ma Xian respectfully said from behind him, "Yes, old ancestor." Patriarch Gaitian nodded and waved his hand. "Pass the order." "Yes." The old demonic immortal immediately arrived in front of them. He solemnly said, "Now, split up and search for that 10,000 saint powerhouse. Anyone who finds him will be richly rewarded." Why would they still want to ask for rewards? As long as they were free, they would thank the heavens and earth. Shua, with the two minor 10,000 saints in front of them, they didn't dare to linger. They immediately split up and went off to search for the 10,000 saints experts. Many people traveled in groups, and only a few traveled alone, including Su Yu, including the 10,000 saint powerhouse who had left everyone behind and disappeared without a trace. He didn't want to bring anyone with him. He wanted to travel alone, which disappointed many who wanted to rely on him. Diyu led a group of people to search for the 10,000 saint powerhouse. Although the old demonic immortal frowned at this, he didn't stop them. When everyone left, Patriarch Gaitian sat cross-legged on a giant rock and said in a hoarse voice, "Human King, do you think they will succeed?" The Reincarnation Human King looked in the direction where everyone had left and nodded slightly. "They will." But he had a thoughtful look in his eyes as he turned to look at the old demonic immortal. "That human, where did you recruit him from?" The old demonic immortal immediately put his hands and feet together when he was questioned by the Reincarnation Human King. He replied carefully, "Human King, he is from the Six Paths Human Alliance. His name is Lu Xiaoyu, and he seems to be a direct relative of one of the higher-ups of the Six Paths Human Alliance." The old demonic immortal was a little worried. The human kings of different domains were all competitors, especially when the heavenly road was about to open. The competition between the human kings would only become more intense. She secretly blamed herself for bringing the people from the Six Paths Human Alliance and making the Reincarnation Human King unhappy. However, the Reincarnation Human King shook his head. "I'm asking about another human." "Another human?" The old demonic immortal was startled. "Who?" She had no idea that there was a human among the people she had recruited. That shouldn't be the case. If there was one, she would have discovered it long ago. A person in a black robe. The Reincarnation Human King's eyes were deep. The old demonic immortal then understood that he was referring to Su Yu. "Human King, this person doesn't look like a human." She clearly remembered that the other party's body was faintly exuding chaotic energy. Only a stoneman could possess that, right? Doesn't look like one? The Reincarnation Human King touched his chest as an ancient oil lamp flashed past. It turned out that he also had a holy mortal body. However, the Reincarnation Human King's oil lamp was not only ancient, but also unusually broken. The wick had never been lit. An unlit oil lamp was meaningless to the Emperor of the Holy Mountain. "I think I've met a person who will be born in the legends." The Reincarnation Human King narrowed his eyes, which were flashing with an intense light. There had always been a legend circulating among the human race. It was said that a new human ancestor would be born among the human race. He would use his holy mortal body to step on the path to heaven and search for the final legacy of the human ancestor. The appearance of Su Yu made the Reincarnation Human King wonder if he was the legendary successor. "I just don't know if his oil lamp was lit or extinguished," the Reincarnation Human King said thoughtfully. The old ancestor Gaitian, who was beside him, understood his meaning. He said in a hoarse voice, if you're curious, why didn't you stop him just now? The reincarnation human king shook his head slightly. The successor of the human ancestor has the luck of heaven and earth. He won't die easily. If he is the successor, he will naturally come back alive. If not, he will die in that Duantian mountain. The old ancestor guy Tion closed his eyes. Then let's wait and see. I hope they succeed. So you entered the Duantian mountain area? The fog was thick, and the closer he got to Duantian mountain, the thicker the fog became. Towards the end, he couldn't even see clearly beyond 1,000 feet. For safety's sake, he had to slow down in case he encountered any mishaps and couldn't react in time. I'd better find a safe place to hide for the time being. Suyu wasn't stupid enough to look for the dangerous all-saint strongman. If he couldn't find him, he would die. Anyway, his curse had been broken, so there was no need to take risks. He just had to wait for things to calm down and then leave quietly. Creak! All of a sudden, a long tongue stretched out from the fog, 1,000 feet away, curling towards Suyu. Chapter 31:30. Suyu didn't even bother to pull out the absolute heaven sword. He simply lifted his finger and pointed. A bolt of disastrous power gushed out and turned into a grayish-black flame, falling on the tongue. Suddenly, the flame surged. Not only did it burn the tongue to ashes, it even burned the tongue to the source of the fire. Roar! A series of miserable screams could be heard as a huge creature hidden in the fog collapsed with a loud bang. Suyu carefully walked over to take a look, only to discover that it was a giant burnt toad. It had the cultivation of a great saint. It occupied the swamp and devoured the creatures on the ground and flying at low altitude. However, it was unlucky to run into Suyu. Suyu looked at the burnt body of the toad and had an idea. He gathered sword energy on his finger and cut open the burnt body of the toad. Its body was also burnt to ashes, but there was a bright red pearl the size of a head lying in the ashes, safe and sound. I knew it, Suyu murmured. With his disastrous power, he should have been able to burn the toad to ashes, but it was only burnt to ashes. There must be something in the body of the toad. This is the blood poison pearl. It contains the poison of the heaven-devouring poisonous toad. You have to be careful if you want to take it. However, just as Suyu was deciding whether to pick it up, an old voice came from behind him. Suyu's heart trembled slightly. The fog here had a strong interference effect on people's senses. Even when someone was so close behind him, he didn't notice it. He turned around unhurriedly and saw the strong man at the peak of the Great Saint Peak. He stood 1,000 feet away from Suyu with his hands behind his back, his eyes shining brightly. I knew you were not an ordinary person. Previously, when old ancestor guy Tion and the reincarnation king arrived, Suyu had sensed the abnormality between heaven and earth before him. So he had guessed that Suyu was not an ordinary person. Now it seemed that his guess was right. He could kill a toad at the great saint level with just a wave of his hand. His cultivation was unfathomable. What can I do for you? Suyu asked lightly. The old man smiled warmly and cupped his fists. Let me introduce myself. I am Xiao Mingyuan from the Mirror Clan. The Mirror Clan? Suyu had been in a 9-star civilization for a long time, but this was the first time he had heard of the Mirror Clan. Haha, it's not surprising that you have never heard of the Mirror Clan. It was a race that had been extinct since the beginning of the era. I am just one of the few clansmen who have survived. So that was it. He didn't know what was so special about the Mirror Clan. Oh, Suyu replied briefly, then picked up the blood poison pearl. The poison inside had a considerable numbing effect on great sages, so it could be used in times of need. Seeing his lack of interest, Xiao Mingyuan finally revealed the purpose of his visit. With a calm expression, he said, "Do you really want to put your life in the hands of others?" Suyu feigned ignorance. Of course not. However, other than obediently obeying orders, we have no other choice. Xiao Mingyuan smiled disdainfully. Sir, you know very well whether or not we will survive after we finish our business. Why do you need to lie to yourself? To Suyu, two of Su. Moreover, do you really think we are looking for the 10,000 saints? Mingyuan asked. Suyu's hand, which was holding the blood poison pearl, suddenly stopped. He slowly turned around to face the man. His eyes glowed. So, I am not the only one who had such suspicions. Mingyuan's eyes shone. Why? You felt something was amiss too? Suyu nodded. Although the old demonic fairy told us that we were bait to lure the 10,000 saints out. However, this is simply untenable. Suyu had never believed the old demon fairy's words. Elder Guy Tian and Reincarnation Renwang are no match for the 10,000 saints. Moreover, even if we take 10,000 steps back, even if the 10,000 saints expert is hiding, why would we need to look for him? A glance from those two strong men is equivalent to a day and a night of searching for them. Clap. Mingyuan was impressed. There are still people who understand. The two of them looked at each other and saw the clarity in each other's eyes. They all agreed that the person they were looking for was definitely not a myriad saint expert. In fact, they were not looking for anything at all. What do you think? Suyu asked. Mingyuan pondered for a moment before making up his mind. I did not want to work with others and planned to do it alone. However, I am worried that I can't do it alone, so I can only ask for your help. Suyu listened to him quietly. According to my plan, we should leave immediately. Mingyuan looked around, feeling uneasy. There must be great danger waiting for us here. Suyu fully agreed with this point. However, how to leave without alerting Elder Guy Tian and Reincarnation Renwang, and how to cut off the old demonic fairy's curse control is crucial. Suyu looked at Mingyuan and could not help but sigh. After all, he was an old monster who had reached the peak of the Great Saint Realm and had cultivated for countless years. They had unfathomable resources, and even had the ability to escape from under the nose of 10,000 saints. In the future, if he encountered the 10,000 saints, he could not let his guard down. Please continue, Suyu said. Mingyuan said, I am proficient in an escape technique, which can be said to be unparalleled in the world. Just give me a location, and I can cross several levels. Mingyuan stroked his beard. Huh? Suyu's pupils shrank. Cross several levels? Wasn't the distance traversed a little too exaggerated? With the speed of an early-stage great saint, it would take at least 6 months to a year to cross a level. Even the sacred mountain son of heaven couldn't cross several realms in one go, right? You don't have to be surprised. My mirror clan was destroyed by the Saint Mountain Emperor, so there must be a reason. Mingyuan laughed at himself. It was precisely because they had mastered the escape technique that they could cross the 9-star civilizations that the Saint Mountain Emperor was afraid of them. So he destroyed their clan. What do you need my help with? Suyu asked. It was obvious that this escape technique was not easy to use. Otherwise, Mingyuan would have left long ago. Why would he wait until now? I need to borrow your strength, Mingyuan said, ashamed. Mingyuan said shamefully. The activation of the escape technique requires a huge amount of energy. I alone am not enough to activate it. Borrow strength? Suyu hesitated. What if his strength was exhausted and he did not succeed? He had been feeding the holy infant fire seed every day, and his strength was constantly declining. What if his strength was used up and he encountered a strong enemy? Moreover, he was not like Mingyuan, whose curse had been lifted. His chances of leaving quietly were much higher than Mingyuan's. Seeing his hesitation, Mingyuan continued. I can ensure that we leave safely, and I can also help you find whatever you want. Suyu was confused when he heard the second half of the sentence. How can you be sure that I can find what I want? What if he is in another realm? Unexpectedly, Mingyuan smiled mysteriously. Even if it is far away, I can find it for you. Even if I reach the 10,000 saints level one day, it will be a piece of cake for me to help you find matters in a different time and space. Matters in a different time and space. Suyu was secretly surprised. Wasn't this Mirror Clan member's talent too nature-defying? Their destruction was not just because of their escape technique, but because of their ability to search for time and space. Chapter 31:31. Where do you want to go? Suyu asked. If it was somewhere too far from the Heavenly Mirror Flower Realm, he would not go. The Heavenly Mirror Flower Realm. However, Mingyuan gave Suyu a location that made him think it was a coincidence. Returning to the Heavenly Mirror Flower Realm was exactly what Suyu wanted. All right, I agree. But remember your promise, Suyu said. If Xiaoming Yuan could really find anything from the nine-star civilization, that would be great. I'm a man of my word, Xiaoming Yuan said heroically. Suyu nodded. Just tell me how you can borrow my strength. All right. Xiaoming Yuan immediately took out many materials and began to set up an extremely complicated formation. The Mirror Clan's escape technique requires a powerful formation that can traverse time and space. This formation will take at least a day to set up. A day? Suyu pondered. He was not too surprised. If he could use an escape technique that could cross several realms at any time, wouldn't he be even more powerful than the Space Saint Clan? Moreover, if it were so easy, how could the Saint Mountain Saints destroy the Mirror Clan so easily? I will protect you. Suyu walked 1,000 feet away, patrolling the surroundings, on guard against any unknown creatures that might affect Xiaoming Yuan's formation. At the same time, Du Yu, Lu Xiaoyu, and the others huddled together and began to search mountain by mountain. They had already reached the top of the first peak of the Duantian Mountain's 9 peaks. The first peak is safe. Lu Xiaoyu patted her chest, relieving the deep pressure and tension in her heart. Along the way, she was afraid that she would suddenly encounter the invincible All-Saint Strongman. Fortunately, they were lucky. After searching the entire mountain, they did not find any enemies. Du Yu stood in the middle of the crowd, as if he had become their leader. He looked down at the other 8 peaks. The steep 8 peaks of the Duantian Mountain were like 9-fingered demonic claws, reaching out from the underground demonic realm with a majestic aura. The rest of the people should have searched at least 3 peaks. Including our first peak, there are 4 peaks that have been searched, Du Yu analyzed. The All-Saint Strongman should be in the last 5 peaks. After he finished speaking, the people who had just relaxed tensed up again. In other words, there was a high probability that one team or one person would find the All-Saint Strongman. Our luck won't be bad. Lu Xiaoyu comforted herself. Suddenly, she noticed a broken tile under her feet. She couldn't help but look around and found that there were many broken bricks and tiles nearby. Brother, do you look? Lu Xiaoyu pointed at her discovery. Du Yu pondered for a moment before leaping into the air. He bent down to take a look and finally saw something. It turned out that there used to be a large-scale formation at the peak of the mountain. It had existed for at least half an era. The formation had been destroyed over the years, leaving only broken bricks and tiles on the ground. It's nothing, don't worry about it. Du Yu flew back to the ground and said, rest here for half a day, then continue. His original intention was to stall for time and strive to use the special Dao artifact from the Sword Sacred Clan to strip the dustless curse from his body. However, everyone just sat down. Suddenly, a late-stage Empyrean Saint Realm expert's eyes glazed over. A plume of green smoke rose from the top of his head, and he said mechanically and hollowly, "Who told you to stop? Keep looking." Everyone who was about to rest was shocked and quickly distanced themselves from this person. Their expressions darkened because this person had obviously used the dustless curse to destroy his soul and turn him into a puppet. "Keep looking," he scolded and became the old demon immortal's puppet to monitor them. Du Yu gritted his teeth and said, "Let's go and look for another mountain." Forced, they began to search for the second mountain. Since a myriad Saint Realm expert might suddenly appear, everyone's nerves were stretched taut, afraid of an unexpected encounter. However, their luck was very good. They didn't find that myriad Saint Realm expert, even after reaching the peak. Phew, we're saved. Lu Xiaoyu let out a relieved sigh. Even Du Yu was secretly sweating. That was close. It seemed that they weren't the ones who encountered the myriad Saint Realm expert, but the other teams. However, the other mountains were quiet, as if they hadn't discovered the myriad Saint Realm expert at all. "Sit where you are and wait for orders," the puppet shouted. This was exactly what he wanted. He secretly took out a palm-sized sword case. After opening it, there was a dazzling array of small swords that were as thin as steel needles. "Go!" he shouted in a low voice. Countless small swords flew up and entered his body through his pores, destroying the dustless curse scattered all over his body. The process was very painful. Du Yu endured it and silently dispelled the dustless curse. Lu Xiaoyu observed the surroundings. She found that there was another broken formation on this mountain. However, this formation was much better preserved than the one on the previous mountain. Even standing on the ground, one could vaguely make out the outline of the formation. It seems to be a spatial teleportation formation. Lu Xiaoyu had learned a bit about formations before, so she knew a bit about it. However, it doesn't seem like a normal spatial teleportation. The formation method used here is very ancient. It definitely doesn't belong to our era. Moreover, it is set up very well. She was a little shocked. Who would set up a formation in such a remote area? It was quite a big deal. Several hours later, across the mountain, they looked at the other 3 mountains. There were people who had reached the peaks of the other 3 mountains. This meant that from the beginning until now, none of the 8 mountains had encountered a myriad Saint Realm expert. The only one that hadn't been searched was the last mountain, the 9th peak. If the myriad Saint Realm expert was indeed at the 9th peak of Sky Shattering, he must be there. Moreover, they didn't know if it was an illusion, but when they looked at the 9th peak, they vaguely felt that the mountain was shrouded in a faint layer of blood mist. Compared to the other 8 mountains, it was clearly different. Gulp. No one knew who was the first to gulp down a mouthful of saliva. Even Du Yu felt a strange chill run down his spine as he stared at the 9th summit. At this moment, the puppet suddenly said, "Let's go to the 9th peak." Du Yu gritted his teeth, turned around, and cupped his fists. "Senior, we've searched the other 8 mountains. The 9th peak is the only one we haven't searched. The myriad Saint Realm expert should be there. There's no doubt about that. Patriarch Gaetion and Senior Human King of the 6 Paths, please capture that myriad Saint Realm expert." Du Yu braced himself and said, "Pa." The puppet didn't hesitate to kick Du Yu in the chest, sending him flying. "If you say another word, be careful that you don't become a puppet too." The puppet let out a hollow but extremely threatening threat. Du Yu clutched his chest and looked at the other 5 people. They all went down the mountain with gloomy expressions, heading to the 9th peak. However, when they arrived at the foot of the 9th peak, they saw Su Yu patrolling the area. The mist prevented them from seeing each other, so they couldn't see each other in advance. Chapter 31-32. By the time Su Yu discovered them, they had also discovered him. Inyu. Lu Xiaoyu was the first to recognize him. The rest of the group looked over. Du Yu was suspicious. Why was Su Yu also wandering around the foot of the 9th summit? He looked around, trying to guess something. The puppet among them had clearly discovered Su Yu. "Why are you not searching the mountain?" it asked. For some reason, the old Mashin's tone was much harsher than the others. It was as if he was afraid that Su Yu would lose control and run away. Su Yu's heart skipped a beat. Xiao Mingyuan was setting up a spell not far away. If they discovered him, the situation would not be good. After thinking for a moment, he walked forward and held them back. "I'm hesitating about whether to go up the 9th summit. I am alone, and I am worried that I will not have enough manpower." This was the only excuse he could use to avoid the doubts of the group. Hearing this, Du Yu's doubts gradually disappeared. The 9th summit was more than dangerous. It was practically sending them to their deaths. The strong martial artist of all saints was likely here. If they charged in, they would most likely die. Then there is no need for you to hesitate any longer. "Come with us," the puppet said. Su Yu looked at the puppet. His eyes flickered, and he nodded. "Okay." The most important thing now was to lure them away. As for using the spell, that could wait. As such, Su Yu was forced to follow them and ascend the 9th summit from the other side. As soon as he set foot on the 9th summit, Su Yu felt as if an electric current had swept through his body, causing his hair to stand on end. It was as if he was not stepping on a mountain, but some terrifying giant creature. He was not the only one who had the same reaction. The rest of the group felt the same, their hearts inexplicably palpitating. "We cannot stop. Continue." The old Machian was monitoring the group through the puppet. They had no choice but to continue their search. The higher they went, the more they shivered. It was as if their lives could be in danger at any time. Everyone was extremely nervous. Su Yu's body surged with energy, prepared to deal with any danger that might appear at any time. Roar suddenly. A roar came without warning. The already nervous group was so frightened that they almost broke into a run. Fortunately, they were all ancient sages and great sages. However, they were all frightened to this extent. Suyu was the only one who was still calm. His eyes were fixed on the dense fog, and he did not retreat. When the dense fog was broken, a colorless, bowl-sized python crawled out of it. Suyu calmed down and casually slashed the python into two with a sword light. Old Ma Xian angrily shouted, "You bunch of useless things, a single snake is enough to scare you like this." They, who had fled in all directions, came back looking at each other with awkward expressions. It seemed that they were overly sensitive. "If you do this again, I'll turn you all into puppets." "Humph, you're all good-looking but useless things." The old demon immortal humphed. She looked at Suyu through the puppet. They were all from the younger generation, but Suyu's performance was completely different from the others. It could be seen that Suyu had experienced many similar dangers, which was why he was able to remain so calm in the face of danger. "Continue," the old Ma Xian said. The group of people could only continue forward, but they had only taken a few steps when another roar sounded. The people who had just made a mistake were now calm. A strong man at the early stage of the Great Saint Realm volunteered to step forward and shouted, "This time, I'll do it." He wanted to see what it was this time. Unexpectedly, as soon as he stepped forward, the dense fog sprayed out a pitch-black venom. Suyu saw that the situation was not good and immediately retreated. The rest of the people also realized that something was wrong and retreated. The strong man at the front saw this, and his expression changed, but he did not retreat. Instead, he took out a high-grade Dao artifact and placed it in front of his body. However, the result made people suck in a breath of cold air. The defense shield of a 7th-grade Dao artifact melted on the spot like a bubble when it came into contact with the venom. The intense venom mercilessly passed through the shield and sprayed onto the man's body. With a blood-curdling scream, that expert turned into a puddle of blood. This miserable scene caused everyone present to turn serious as they stared at the flowing mist, which had calmed down once again. They only felt that there was an extremely dangerous existence in the mist, staring at them like a tiger watching its prey. The two sides confronted each other for a long time. The old demonic fairy controlled the puppet and walked forward. When he passed through the 1,000 feet of mist, he could not help but be stunned. He saw that in the distance, there were also a few creatures on full alert. It was not a giant creature that attacked them, but another group of creatures that were climbing the mountain. "Stop!" The old demonic fairy was angry and annoyed. He gathered both sides. Through the 1,000 feet of mist, everyone finally recognized that they were on the same side. It was a false alarm. Lu Xiaoyu patted her chest. She felt like she was going crazy. First it was a snake, and now it was one of their own. Even the slightest movement made them feel like they were facing a great enemy. This was what people called a frightened snake in a cup. "Why did you suddenly attack us?" Lu Xiaoyu asked angrily as she thought of this. The team members that they had painstakingly recruited had died so inexplicably. The other side was a group of 3 people. Their cultivation was not high, only at the late stage of the ancient saint realm. Glancing at them, Suyu felt that something was wrong. "Why did we attack you?" The 3 of them looked at each other, their eyes full of confusion. "We heard the roar of the demonic beasts, so we hid under the boulder to defend ourselves. Then we saw you coming. We did not attack during that period." Lu Xiaoyu did not believe their excuses. She snorted. "Still trying to argue? Who else could it be? There's no third party here." Patter. A thick, fishy liquid fell from the sky, drenching Lu Xiaoyu from head to toe. Everyone followed the source of the liquid and looked up. All of them could not help but gasp. They saw a giant head the size of a palace floating above them. 2 red eyes the size of a giant door, like 2 blood-red suns, were staring at them greedily. The mist in the distance stirred crazily, and an incomparably long body could be vaguely seen. What is that?" Someone asked, his heart trembling. His mind was blank. The python's body was huge, almost 1/10 the size of the 9th summit. At this moment, its body was wrapped around the 9th summit, its head poking out, staring at them. While they were hesitating, Su had already rushed out. The giant python had blocked the way down the mountain, so that they could only go up. Roar! As soon as he moved, the giant python attacked immediately, spitting out terrifying venom. The people, who had experienced this before, did not dare to withstand it. They all fled up the mountain, not putting up any resistance. Only the 3 people who had just met tried to use the boulder to put up a little resistance. Unexpectedly, wherever the venom passed, the boulder melted instantly. The 3 people were melted into a puddle of blood. Suyu ran wildly. The higher he went, the more frightened he became. He felt that the ecology of the first heaven cliff was too unreasonable. It was just an area of tens of thousands of square meters. How could it have nurtured such a giant python and the giant poisonous toad they had encountered before? What did they rely on to grow so big? The food in the area of tens of thousands of square meters was not even enough to fill the gaps between their teeth. In short, the first heaven cliff gave him a very strange feeling. Chapter 31-33. Hiss! As he pondered, the giant python chased after him again. In an instant, sand and pebbles flew everywhere, and giant trees toppled over along the way. Everyone who heard the sound was terrified, trying to escape toward the peak of the mountain. Suyu turned his head to look back from time to time. The figure of the giant python was faintly discernible in the dense fog. Its massive body swept through everything in its path, leaving nothing but ruins in its wake. He found it even more unbelievable. If the 9th summit had such a giant python, why would it only now destroy the summit? A simple movement from it could shake the earth and mountains, and it was extremely destructive. This told Suyu that there was definitely something wrong with the giant python's origins. However, he had no time to think. Suyu summoned the little lion and used its escape technique to escape toward the peak of the mountain. It passed by the crowd at a speed that surpassed that of a normal human, escaping first. Seeing this, who would be willing to fall behind? Those who fell behind would surely die in the mouth of the giant python. Explosive flame sword. Duyu saw that the situation was not good, summoning 9 transparent swords that surrounded his body. Bang! After a loud noise, one of the swords exploded, turning into a hazy ball of light. Duyu inhaled, inhaling the light into his nostrils. The ball of light traveled from his nose down his throat into his abdomen, then explosively expanded to every part of his body through his rapidly circulating meridians. Finally, all of it shot out from his pores. Duyu flew forward in a manner that was close to exploding, overtaking Suyu. The little lion clicked its tongue. "You can do that," Suyu thought to himself. The Mingjian villa was, after all, the #1 crafting family in the 9-star civilization. They still had some outstanding aspects that could not be underestimated. Looking at the rest of the people, they were afraid that they would fall behind, all of them displaying their abilities. They used all sorts of escape techniques, and for a moment, they were not far behind Suyu. The 9 Peaks mountain was only so big. Everyone ran for their lives, quickly reaching the peak. Duyu turned back and shouted, "Quick! Ask Ancestor, Gai Tian, and Human King of Reincarnation to help." They were already in such a dangerous situation. If those 2 did not help, they would all die here. The puppet that was monitoring them paused for a moment, as if asking for instructions from the 2 strong men. Outside Duantian Mountain, Patriarch Gai Tian, who was sitting cross-legged, suddenly opened his eyes. His dry, yellowish eyes shone with a deep glint. "I finally found it." The curse aura on his body fluctuated with his emotions and violently trembled, filling the surrounding mountains and rivers. However, Human King Samsura still maintained his sitting posture and said indifferently, "Don't be impatient, there is still a little bit left." The 9th summit. Suyu and the rest of the people ran madly and reached the peak of the mountain one after another. He was just about to consider whether or not he should reveal the truth that he had already broken the dustless curse and take to the skies, leaving the vicinity of Broken Sky Mountain. However, to everyone's surprise, when they were about to reach the top of the mountain, the giant serpent suddenly stopped attacking. Through the thick mist, one could see its enormous body coiling around the broken mountain. The huge head spat out a snake tongue that was as thick as a tree and stared at them greedily. The strange thing was that it didn't dare to move forward anymore. It could only pace back and forth outside the place it was at. Although such a strange scene was inconceivable to them, I heaved a sigh of relief. Who? Everyone gasped for breath and stared at the python that didn't dare to move forward. Suyu took a slight step back and turned around to guard against the peak of the mountain. There were so many giant creatures here, it was better to be cautious. Unexpectedly, when he turned around, he found a male corpse on the peak of the mountain. He was dressed in gray rags, his hair was messy, and his skin was rough and sallow. No matter how one looked at him, he looked like a mortal farmer. But why was he at the peak of the mountain? Even more strangely, Suyu found a rather ancient spell under his body. The spell must have existed for at least an era, and it looked extremely old. However, it was still considered complete, and it was unknown if it could be used. And why is there a corpse? After everyone had recovered from their shock, they discovered the existence of the corpse. However, they were obviously not interested in an ordinary corpse. What they were interested in was the spell under his body. That's strange. There's a similar spell on top of every mountain. Lu Xiaoyu squatted down to observe the spell at close range. Oh, Suyu's eyes flickered slightly. There was one on every mountain? Seeing that everyone was approaching around the spell, Suyu quietly retreated until he reached the edge of the mountain. At that moment, the people were no longer satisfied with observing. One of the great saints guessed, this spell has some characteristics of space transportation. Lu Xiaoyu confirmed his guess. It is indeed a transportation spell. Her beautiful eyes met the other two's, and they saw a strange gleam in each other's eyes. The three of them glanced at the puppet tacitly, understanding each other's thoughts. If this was a transportation spell, they might be able to use it to leave. The great saint said telepathically, "Everyone, I have some understanding of curses. No matter how strong a curse is, there is a limit to its range. If we exceed a certain distance, we should be able to avoid being controlled by the curse. Even if we don't exceed this distance, we can weaken the curse's control and buy us enough time." Du Yu and Lu Xiaoyu blinked, agreeing with his opinion. The three of them looked at the spell together. Lu Xiaoyu's eyes flickered, and she pretended to be studying the spell out of curiosity. She stepped forward and moved the corpse away, throwing it aside. "Let me see what spell this is." She carried the puppet on her back and quietly placed an energy stone in the center of the spell, secretly activating it. However, she found it a little strange. Ordinary transportation spells would usually emit a weak space attribute after they were activated, but there was no such thing in front of her. What emitted was actually a kind of obscure fluid. It was as if what she had activated was not a transportation spell, but some kind of door. "What are you doing?" The puppet noticed the fluid appearing in the spell and shouted. Lu Xiaoyu hurriedly retreated, her face blank. I don't know. It suddenly activated itself. Has it been activated? Strangely, the puppet was not worried at all. Instead, it looked calm and happy. "It's good that it has been activated." The expressions of Du Yu and the others changed slightly. What did it mean? Was the old demonic fairy not worried that they would activate the space transportation spell to escape? Suyu's gaze changed, jumping back and forth between the spell and the corpse. He had long felt that this place was not simple. The old demonic fairy's words made Suyu feel a great sense of danger. Without another word, he turned and rose into the air, running wildly toward the horizon. As soon as he moved, the others felt even more uneasy, and they all moved away from the spell. Du Yu had a strong premonition. "Old demonic fairy, what are you trying to do?" At this moment, how could they not understand that the so-called search for the strong martial artists of the All Saints was a lie? There's no strong martial artist of the All Saints here, right? You lied to us. Du Yu questioned. The old demonic fairy let out a strange laugh through the puppet. "I did lie to you, but the strong martial artists of the All Saints are indeed here." What? Du Yu and the others were shocked. How had they not discovered their existence? Chapter 31-34. Du Yu and the rest were secretly shocked as they searched around. The ninth peak was so small. If there was an All Saints expert here, why couldn't they sense him? Where is he? Do you ask fearfully? If the All Saints expert was here, wouldn't they be in great danger? Jieja. The old demon immortal cackled strangely, so far away, yet so close. Eh. Everyone was stunned. So close? Their gazes swept around and landed on the mortal's corpse that was kicked away. Their expressions changed. Could he be the heavily injured All Saints expert? Lu Xiaoyu shook her head. Impossible. How can ordinary people like us touch the corpse of an All Saints expert? Just now, she had personally moved the corpse away from the formation. If it was the corpse of the All Saints expert, she would have been turned to ashes long ago. The old demon immortal stared at the corpse. That's because his corpse is on the formation. Now, why don't you try touching his corpse again? Lu Xiaoyu hesitated. She took out an unwanted 5th grade Dao artifact and tossed it on the corpse. She had heard her elders say that even after death, the corpse of an All Saints expert possessed great power. If an ordinary person touched it, they would be destroyed by the remnant power within the corpse. If the corpse before her was really the All Saints expert, then the 5th grade Dao artifact might be reflected back. Clang. The Dao artifact gave off a hard sound when it was thrown on the corpse. Apart from that, there was nothing strange. Lu Xiaoyu pouted. See, it's not some All Saints expert. She walked forward, bent down, and reached out to pick up the Dao artifact. But just as her fingers were about to touch the Dao artifact, a gust of wind blew over, and the Dao artifact on the chest of the corpse was blown away. Lu Xiaoyu's figure came to an abrupt halt. She stood there motionlessly, her fingers maintaining the posture, not daring to move at all. But her face was trembling, her eyelids were twitching, and her teeth were chattering uncontrollably. Her entire body was trembling uncontrollably. The Dao artifact had not been reflected back because it had already been reduced to dust. The corpse before her was undoubtedly the corpse of the All Saints expert. Her finger was just a few millimeters away from the corpse of the 10,000 Saint expert. If she moved a little further, she would have been reduced to dust. Walala. When the surrounding people saw this, they all retreated in fear, their faces filled with fear. Du stepped forward and pulled the stiff Lu Xiaoyu back. He retreated to the edge of the mountain peak, his eyes filled with shock. The 10,000 Saint expert is dead? He looked at the puppet controlled by the old demon immortal. Was it you who killed him? The old demon deity had a complicated look in his eyes. Of course not. Although I, Patriarch Gaitian, and the Samsara human king are extremely powerful, it's impossible for us to kill a severely injured myriad saint expert. The one who killed him is someone else. There is actually someone who could kill a 10,000 saint expert. Could it be that the one who attacked was the mysterious son of the sacred mountain? Only they had absolute confidence in killing a 10,000 saint expert. However, it was no longer important who killed him. Then what exactly do you want? Du shouted, since the 10,000 saints powerhouse is already dead, what's the point of us searching for him? They had deceived them to come to the mountain peak, saying that they were looking for a severely injured 10,000 saint expert. But in the end, the 10,000 saint expert had already died. The two minor 10,000 saints powerhouses could have come here by themselves, so why did they make the low-level cultivators come here? The puppet controlled by the old demon immortal revealed a strange smile. Firstly, the broken sky domain does not allow those who are too powerful to enter. Is that so? You thought about it carefully and felt that it was really possible. Otherwise, the two minor 10,000 saints will be able to find every corner of the 9 peaks of Broken Sky Mountain with just a glance. Why would they go through so much trouble? I, Patriarch Gaitian, and the Samsara human king, followed the 10,000 saint experts all the way here, but found that Broken Sky Mountain is not allowed to enter. The old demon immortal looked at Du and the others as if he was looking at a corpse. Therefore, she did not hide anything from them anymore. If you enter without permission, you will be attacked by a mysterious force. The old demon immortal pointed at the 10,000 saint expert's corpse. Originally, he could have lingered on for a while and even had the possibility of recovering. But because he tried to enter Broken Sky Mountain, he was trampled by a giant foot that came out of nowhere and lost most of his life. That is why he died here. If Suyu had been there, he would have remembered that in front of Broken Sky Mountain, in the ruins of the battle, he had seen an incomparably huge footprint. The size of the footprint and the depth of the power left behind were shocking to the eye. Du Yu's eyes were filled with surprise. If that is the case, why did he not leave Broken Sky Mountain, but instead run up to the peak? He knew that Broken Sky Mountain was a forbidden area, so why did he still come? And in the end, he died because of a formation? That is because the formation beneath him might have been able to save his life. Unfortunately, he did not make it to the end and fell in front of the formation. The old demon immortal's eyes were filled with joy. Formation? Everyone's eyes were once again drawn to the formation. The formation, which was flowing with the strange fluid, was still revolving, but it did not open for a long time. As for the second reason I asked you to come here, that is because once the spell formation is activated, everything in Skybreak Mountain will be destroyed. Thus, I had no choice but to painstakingly trick you juniors to come here and activate the spell formation. The old demon immortal faintly smiled. At this point, they finally understood that it was all a scam from beginning to end. Hunting down the 10,000 Saint Expert, searching for the hiding 10,000 Saint Expert, it was all a lie. They only had one goal, and that was to guide them to open the formation step by step. From a moment they discovered the broken formation at the first peak, the old demon immortal had intentionally or unintentionally guided them to pay attention to the formation, all the way until the 9th peak, when they came to the complete formation. Lu Xiaoyu was influenced imperceptibly and took the initiative to open the formation. They could not and did not dare enter Broken Sky Mountain, so they tricked them into coming in and open the formation. Their goal was not the mere corpse of the 10,000 Saint Expert, but the formation of Broken Sky Mountain. Unfortunately, it was too late for them to understand now. The puppet controlled by the old demon immortal stretched out its arms, revealing a smile of relief. Come, let the tomb of the ultimate divine master reappear in the world. What? Du Yu and the others were shocked once again. Could it be that the teleportation formation in front of them was actually the tomb of the ultimate divine master? Rumble. As soon as he finished his words, the 9th peak they were in suddenly trembled, as if some giant creature was gradually awakening. Run! Du Yu was suddenly awakened, and without hesitation, he rushed into the sky. The others also ran in all directions, wanting to leave Broken Sky Mountain as soon as possible, so that they would not be destroyed along with Broken Sky Mountain. Chapter 31-35. But the old demon immortal coldly smiled. You want to leave? Don't you think it's already too late? All of you? The corners of her mouth were filled with venom as she activated the dustless curse. In an instant, several screams rang out. 4 of them fell from midair and crashed into the 9th summit. The old demon immortal suddenly discovered that there were still 2 people that hadn't come down. When he looked up, he saw that Diyue had brought Lu Xiaoyu and was running towards the horizon. The former's abdomen shone resplendently, and dense sword chi surged out. Not only did it destroy the dustless curse in her body, but it also suppressed it, preventing her from acting up for now. Oh, no wonder you were asking so many questions. It turns out you were trying to stall for time, so you could undo the dustless curse in your body. The old demon immortal suddenly understood. Diyu didn't run away. Instead, he stayed behind to ask questions and resolve the doubts in his heart. How could he possibly want to know the truth? He simply wanted to stall for time, so that he could secretly undo the dustless curse. You dare to lie to me? The old demon immortal coldly coughed. He leapt up to chase after them. However, a sudden change occurred. As the old demon immortal was about to use his strength, a mysterious supernatural power suddenly fell down from the skies above the broken mountain range, condensing into a giant foot that ruthlessly trampled down. The puppet controlled by the old demon immortal was instantly crushed into dust. Outside the broken heaven mountain, as old Ma Xian was controlling the puppet, his eyes suddenly flashed open and he spat out a mouthful of black blood. Then he clutched his chest and screamed out in pain. Not only did the gigantic foot destroy the puppets it controlled, it even injured itself. She had almost been annihilated as well. A fearful look appeared in Patriarch Gaition's eyes. It would be much easier if these powers did not exist. They didn't want to go around in circles to trick a group of juniors into opening the formation. There were simply far too many dangers within. The old demon immortal was only controlling a puppet. He couldn't use the puppet to attack without permission. If he were to expose his strength, then he would be instantly killed. Old ancestor, there are still 3 people alive. What do we do? The old demon immortal wiped the black blood from the corners of his lips, a look of shame on his face. Patriarch Gaition closed his eyes and raised his hands, pointing at Mount Duantian as if he was controlling something from afar. In the broken heaven mountain, Du was running wildly with Lu Xiaoyu in tow. Just as they were about to rush out of the Duantian mountain area, they suddenly noticed Su Yu, who was not far away. Su Yu, who had left a long time ago, surprisingly stayed at the edge of the Duantian mountain area, not stepping out. Why aren't you leaving? Du Yu's eyes flashed. He could be considered an intelligent person and understood that the Broken Sky Mountain was currently the safest place. Both Patriarch Gaition and Reincarnation King were unable to enter this area. If they left this area, either one of them could easily kill them. However, the reason he knew that this place was safe was because he had learned this secret from old Ma Xin. Since Su Yu had left in advance, he shouldn't have known about this, right? However, to Du Yu's surprise, Su Yu said calmly, Mount Duantian is the safest place. I'm guessing that old ancestor Gaition, the reincarnation human king, and the old demon fairy can't come in. If he hadn't confirmed that Su Yu had already left, Du would have suspected that Su Yu had eavesdropped on the old demon fairy's conversation. There's no proof. You're just guessing, aren't you? Du asked. Su Yu was expressionless. Then why did you stop? Why aren't you leaving? Du was silent. He was also considering when to leave this place. Looking at the two of them, Su Yu asked, that formation leads to the tomb of the ultimate divine master, right? Did the old demon immortal tell you about this? What? This time, not only Du, but even Lu Xiaoyu was taken aback. You know everything? It seems like my guess was right. The shocked expression on her face proved Su Yu's guess. Du Yu's eyes were filled with disbelief. You guessed it? How could he have guessed it? If old Ma Xin hadn't said it to himself, he wouldn't have been able to figure out where that formation led to. Su Yu nodded lightly. I guess a long time ago. Don't you think that the ecology of the Duantian mountain is very strange? This place is barren, but it can nurture giant poisonous toads and giant pythons. What do they eat and drink? Such giant monsters had to absorb energy to grow. The Duantian mountain area obviously couldn't support their growth. The only explanation was that they came from another place. As soon as he saw the transportation portal, Su Yu knew where it came from. When he saw the seemingly ordinary corpse, Su Yu understood even more clearly what kind of place this transportation portal was, which a strong man of all saints had to protect before his death. The answer was obvious, the tomb of the ultimate divine master. The place that strong man of all saints had been to before his death. Hearing this, Du suddenly felt his hair stand on end. His eyes flickered as he looked at Su Yu. A person could actually find out the whole truth just by relying on a few clues? Who are you? Du's heart was filled with fear. For the first time in his life, he was afraid of a person's wisdom. Even the 1,000-year-old monsters couldn't be as flawless as Su Yu. Could they? Me? Su Yu laughed self-deprecatingly. I'm just a little ancient saint. Don't worry about me. Du's nervousness eased when he heard this. He was just a little strong man of all saints. So what if he was a little powerful? However, it was Lu Xiaoyu who noticed something. She narrowed her eyes and asked, Why are you fine? Du suddenly realized that he had overlooked an important issue. He took a step back, distancing himself from Su Yu. He looked Su Yu up and down, shocked. How are you not affected by the dustless curse? At the last moment, the old demon fairy had clearly activated the dustless curse, turning everyone into puppets to silence them. Why was Su Yu safe and sound? Su Yu asked calmly. Aren't you all fine too? Du yelled. I used the unique technique of the Mingjian Villa, so of course I'm not afraid of the curse. But how did you resist it? He was just a little strong man of the ancient saint realm. Su Yu was expressionless. It was luck. He said it casually, but it made people feel that it was very mysterious. This kind of thing couldn't be explained by luck, right? However, thinking back, he had indeed just broken through to the ancient saint level. The two of them felt relieved. How mysterious could a little cultivator of the ancient saint realm with no background be? Du Yu regained his confidence and said, "No matter how we were before, we are now in the same boat. From now on, you will follow us. With my strength, it's more than enough to protect you." So you looked at Lu Xiaoyu, who was in his arms, and said, "Can you protect the two of us?" "Ha!" Du Yu laughed proudly. "With my abilities, what's so difficult about protecting the two of you?" However, just as he finished speaking, an obscure force penetrated the Duantian mountain and pounced toward the three of them. Updated at 7 p.m. Chapter 31-36. It was a gloomy power that was similar to a curse. It was extremely gloomy and difficult to deal with, but it was also boundless. In their senses, the power was like a giant net that covered the entire broken mountain, leaving them with nowhere to escape. It's Patriarch Gai Tian's curse. Lu Xiaoyu turned pale. An old fiend immortal's curse was enough to kill them, let alone Patriarch Gai Tian's own curse. On the other hand, Du Yue was extremely calm. "Don't panic. If Patriarch Gai Tian's power could penetrate this place, he wouldn't have gone through so much trouble to find juniors like us to work for him." As expected, the seemingly thick cursed net shrouded the sky above the broken sky mountain, but it was unable to press down. There seemed to be an invisible force blocking outside forces from entering. Lu Xiaoyu heaved a long sigh of relief when she saw this, and there was a trace of reliance in her gaze as she looked at Du Yu. Du Yu was calm and composed as he said haughtily, "Haha, as long as we wait here, we will be in an invincible position. No matter how those two minor myriad saints threaten us, we won't have to worry." So you ponder for a while. The power of the holy body and the power of chaos surged under his skin, forming a protective barrier. His expression turned serious as he warned, "Old ancestor Gaitian knows Mount Duantian better than we do, yet he still cursed us. There must be something fishy about this. Don't be careless." Seeing his nervous expression, Du didn't think much of it and said confidently, "Although you are proficient in deduction, you can't escape from basic reality no matter what." He looked disdainfully at the cursed web in the sky, hugged Lu Xiaoyu in his arms, and laughed heartily. "Come on, old thing, what can you do to us?" However, just as the words left his mouth, the thick and dense curse net began to shrink rapidly. It condensed into a twisted, monstrous face the size of a mountain in the sky above the broken mountain range. The strange face was right above their heads. It stared at them with resentful eyes and muttered something. Su Yu felt that something in his bosom had become restless, so he took out a jade box. What was left inside was the dustless curse that he had separated from his body. However, at that moment, the dustless curse was shaking intensely. Numerous cracks had appeared on it. Strands of black air flowed out of the dustless curse. As expected, this was not the dustless curse at all, but another kind of extremely evil curse. Black chi quickly surged out and turned into a pitch-black, sinister face. It was exactly the same as the twisted face in the sky. It broke through the jade box and pounced towards Xia Qingchen. It was so fast that it was difficult to guard against it. By the time Su Yu noticed it, the strange face had already pounced into his body. Fortunately, Su Yu had taken precautions. The chaotic energy and the power of the holy body under his skin were impenetrable, and he managed to hold off the strange face for a while. Seizing this opportunity, Su Yu unsheathed his sword. With a flash of the absolute heaven sword, the curse was shattered. The so-called curse, in the end, was just a force, its power manifested in controlling people. But if you can't even enter a person's body, how can you be a threat? Lu Xiaoyu, who Du Yu was hugging tightly, suddenly screamed without warning. Combined with the changes in the dustless spell in Su Yu's jade box, one could imagine what had happened to her body. "Stay away from her." Su Yu reminded them in time. Du Yu, who was hugging Lu Xiaoyu, had a drastic change of expression. He wanted to push Lu Xiaoyu away, but it was too late. Inside Lu Xiaoyu's body, a pitch-black, strange face suddenly rushed out and entered Du Yu's body. "Hiss!" Du Yu let out a cold gasp, and his face instantly turned pale. On the other hand, most of the curse in Lu Xiaoyu's body had been transferred to Du Yu, and she was undoubtedly much more relaxed. But that didn't mean it was over. The strange face in the sky was still chanting the curse. Relying on the connection between the curses, it controlled the curse in their bodies from a distance. Both of them felt that there was something in their heads that was devouring their souls and fighting for control of their bodies. Du was fine. He had the unique technique of the Mingjian Villa that could restrain curses. Wisps of sword energy frantically destroyed the curse that had invaded his body. He regained control of his body step by step. As long as he was given time, it would be effortless for him to expel the power of the curse in his body. "Brother Du Yu, save me quickly." Lu Xiaoyu didn't have the ability to do so. The curse in her body was exploding rapidly, and it was rapidly taking over her consciousness. At the moment of contact, a part of the curse in Lu Xiaoyu's body flowed into Du Yu's body. Du Yu, who had just managed to stabilize the curse, was once again forced into a passive position. He kicked Lu Xiaoyu away angrily and scolded her sternly. "Get lost. Don't try to harm me." Lu Xiaoyu staggered and fell to the ground. She held her head as she screamed and pleaded. "Brother Du Yu, you said you would protect me. Whether it was in the past or just now, Du Yu had confidently sworn that he would protect him and Su Yu. But now, in the face of real danger, he had kicked her away. What does it have to do with me that you're incompetent?" Du Yu said coldly. He wouldn't sacrifice himself for a woman. Lu Xiaoyu was on the verge of despair. Suddenly, she saw Su Yu, who was standing not too far away, out of the corner of her eye. It was as if she had grasped onto her last life-saving straw. "Inu, save me quickly." Her tone made it seem as if Su Yu should save her. Not to mention that Su Yu couldn't remove the curse in her body. Even if he could, why should he save her? Did he owe Lu Xiaoyu anything? "I'd like to help, but I can't," Su Yu said simply. If it had been him in the past, he would probably have tried to save her enthusiastically. But after experiencing so many changes in the world, even his heart had become cold. "Come here quickly," Lu Xiaoyu yelled in a shrill voice. She wasn't begging Su Yu to save her at all. She was ordering him. Even now, in her heart, Su Yu was still an ant who had just ascended to the ancient saint level. What was wrong with asking him to come over and divert some of the curse? She was thinking highly of Su Yu. Su Yu was indifferent. He even quietly retreated a little. If Lu Xiaoyu had spoken in a different tone, he might have been able to help alleviate the outbreak of the curse. But now it seemed unnecessary. Why won't you save me?" Lu Xiaoyu, in her agony, vented her resentment on Su Yu. She got up angrily and pounced at Su Yu with a roar, trying to force Su Yu to bear some of the curse's burden. Su Yu's eyes were cold. Before she could get close, he struck her with his scabbard, sending her flying backward. She spat out blood and fell to the ground with a loud thud. "Ridiculous," Su Yu said coldly. It was Du Yue who had betrayed her, not Su Yu. She didn't vent her resentment on Du Yue, but on Su Yu. Did she think he was an easier target to bully? Lu Xiaoyu, whose soul was already injured, finally couldn't take it anymore. Her consciousness was completely taken over. Her eyeballs rolled, and she became abnormally sluggish. She was successfully controlled. Then, Lu Xiaoyu's mouth cracked open, and she let out a creepy laugh that sent shivers down one's spine. Then, with a shriek, her body exploded. An enormous black air current rushed out like a volcanic eruption, blotting out the sky. The enormous air current pressed down on the two of them like a mountain. Chapter 31-37. Most of them were directed at Su Yu, and the air currents were filled with deep resentment. Although Lu Xiaoyu's body had exploded, her mental strength was not destroyed. She controlled the curse and tried to engulf Su Yu and Du Yu. Du Yu's expression changed drastically. Even his secret technique could not completely block such a massive curse. Su Yu muttered softly, "Crazy woman." He had not provoked her, but now she was looking for trouble with Suyu. It was as if Suyu owed her something. Get lost. If you mess around again, I'll destroy your body and soul. Suyu shouted coldly. Lu Xiaoyu's soul had not been destroyed, and there was still a chance for her body to be rebuilt. However, if she insisted on going her own way, Suyu could not be blamed. It's you. It's all because of you. The massive air currents condensed into Lu Xiaoyu's resentful face. Her empty eye sockets stared straight at Suyu. Boom! As she spoke, a giant face came crashing down. Suyu's eyes flashed with a cold light. You don't know what's good for you. The absolute heaven sword was unsheathed, turning into a streak of light that pierced through the air currents. With a shrill howl, Lu Xiaoyu's soul was severely injured. However, she did not stop. Instead, she became even more vicious. I want you dead. Ah! As she screamed, the giant face came crashing down. Suyu called back the absolute heaven sword. As he retreated unhurriedly, he took out a seemingly ordinary broken palm. Looking at the resentful Lu Xiaoyu, Suyu said calmly, keep your eyes open in your next life. Don't follow the wrong person again, and don't provoke the wrong person. As soon as he finished speaking, he clenched his fist and slapped the giant face casually. There was no explosion of power, nor was there any leakage of power. However, the imposing human face was shattered into nothingness. Lu Xiaoyu's soul shriek was cut off like a cliff. The whole sky returned to normal. No, even the outer enchantment of Mount Duantian had a deep palm print on it, and it was about to break. The air currents dispersed, and a faint trace of blood-red light, only as thick as a hair, slipped away from the enchantment. Suyu's eyes were sharp as he stared at it, and he snorted. Trying to escape? He waved his hand again. The blood-red thread was extremely stubborn. Only a few cracks appeared on its body, but still twisted tenaciously and tried to escape. Suyu was slightly surprised. This broken palm was none other than the arm of the All-Saint strongman that was kept by the puppet Saint clan. As it moved, it possessed unparalleled strength, and it was more than enough to kill some evil beings. Who would have thought that the seemingly fragile blood thread would be able to withstand a single blow without dying? As he thought of this, Suyu was even more determined to not let him leave, so he waved his arms several times. The threads of blood became weaker and weaker, and finally, when they couldn't take it anymore, they exploded, turning into a mist of blood that evaporated completely. Outside the Broken Heaven Mountain, Patriarch Gaetion's eyes remained closed as he pointed toward Mount Duantian. Suddenly, his aged eyes opened abruptly while one of his fingers broke with a crack, and then a large mouthful of multicolored blood sprayed from his mouth. Patriarch! The old demon fairy hurriedly stepped forward to support the tottering Patriarch, and said in a panic, Patriarch, are you all right? Patriarch Gaetion steadied himself, and with a gloomy look in his eyes, he wiped the blood from the corners of his mouth. I underestimated that human. He could even destroy my heart demon blood curse. Upon hearing this, the old demon fairy's pupil shrank. The heart demon blood curse was one of the top curses that only the Patriarch could perform, and it was more than 3 times more powerful than the witching curse. Even a peak great saint of the same level would not be able to escape death if they encountered the heart demon blood curse. How did Suyu, a junior who had just broken through to the level of the ancient saint, do it? The reincarnation king's eyes lit up with interest. Oh, I didn't know that this saint physique of my clan had hidden his strength so well. A cold light flickered in his eyes, never to be extinguished. In today's world, thousands of clans were fighting for supremacy. The human race was even more so. Legend had it that at the end of the heavenly road, the human ancestor had left a legacy for the human race. Only the strongest of the human race could reach the end of the heavenly road, obtain the legacy, and become the new human ancestor. One more strong enemy meant one less chance. The cold light in the reincarnation king's eyes was self-evident. Who cares if he has hidden his strength or not? Patriarch Gaetion's murderous intent had been aroused. Let's see how long he can hide. In their eyes, a scene rarely seen in the world was reflected. The 9 peaks of Duantian Mountain, which had never changed since ancient times, were now slowly rising from the ground. 5 straight, perilous peaks continuously extended towards the end of the sky. Beneath the ground, a pitch-black, gigantic object kept emerging from the ground. For a moment, the sky turned dark. All the forces from all directions surged towards Duantian Mountain. For some reason, the dark clouds in the sky reflected a touch of demonic blood-red color. The mountains and rivers within a radius of billions of miles were quickly shrouded in a blood-red light. With this as the background, the pitch-black Duantian Mountain could be seen in its entirety. At a glance, it was not a peak at all. It was a 9-fingered demonic palm. Its fingers were exposed all year round, and the demonic palm was hidden beneath the heavens and the earth. It was only at this moment that the formation was activated that the demonic palm emerged from the ground. No one knew what kind of demonic palm it was, or what kind of existence it was. The only thing they knew was that even the powerful patriarch Gaition and the Reincarnation King, who were known as the Lesser 10,000 Saints, could not even get within 1,000 miles of the demonic palm. If they tried to force their way in, they would be incinerated. The 3 of them gasped as they watched the demonic palm appear out of nowhere. What made their scalps go numb was that the demonic palm had moved. 9 straight fingers slowly bent and clenched into a fist. Everything near the demonic palm exploded under the pressure of the slowly clenched fist. Even the various air currents that were attracted to it were ignited, giving off shocking sparks. On the 9th peak, the giant python that had chased after them could not descend the mountain in time and was immediately crushed into a mist of blood, leaving nothing behind. The rocks, living creatures, and ancient trees attached to the peak were all crushed to pieces. It was even to the extent that many places had been squeezed into nothingness. Su Yu and Diyue would either stay behind and be crushed into nothingness, or they would rush out of the demonic palm and be killed by Patriarch Gaition and the Reincarnation King. They had no way out. Su Yu's face was solemn, but he did not panic. He immediately leaped to Xiaoming Yuan's side. The formation in front of him was already at the final juncture. "It's done," Xiaoming Yuan exclaimed. Looking at the demonic finger pressing down on him, his expression changed drastically. "Quick, let's go." The 2 of them jumped onto the formation immediately and imbued their strength into it. Xiaoming Yuan's strength was limited, and Su Yu was only an ancient saint, so they could be ignored. By the time they activated the formation, they would have been crushed by the demonic palm. Without hesitation, he took out the broken palm of the greater 10,000 saints and slammed it onto the formation. The power contained in the broken palm was 100 times greater than that of the 2 of them. The formation was instantly activated, bursting with a brilliant light that engulfed the 2 of them. "Take me with you." Diyue came over upon hearing the sound and leaped over. Xiaoming Yuan's expression changed as he scolded, "Don't come over." The formation was only designed to accommodate 2 people. It could not possibly accommodate a 3rd person. If a 3rd person tried to force their way in, the formation would automatically expel that person. The person who was expelled was random. It could be Diyue, who came in last, or Xiaoming Yuan, or even Su Yu. Chapter 31-38. Diyu saw the spell formation as a life-saving straw. How could he give it up? Clenching his teeth, he jumped onto the spell formation. The moment he jumped onto it, just as he had expected, the originally stable circulation of the formation immediately underwent a drastic change. First, the white light of the teleportation flickered rapidly. Then, the spell formation itself began to shake violently, and the space around it became distorted. "Go down quickly. The spell formation can't take it anymore." Xiaoming Yuan was shocked and angry, but he did not dare to use force in the process of teleportation, lest he cause more serious consequences. Diyu would not give up. He stabbed his sword into the ground and refused to leave. "If you want to leave, you can leave. I haven't lived long enough." The affected spell formation changed more and more violently. Xiaoming Yuan, Diyu, and Su Yu felt the world spinning around them. They could not stand steadily, as if they would be thrown out at any moment. Su Yu also had a bad feeling. He glared at Du Yu, his eyes filled with coldness. This person had been annoying from the start. When there was nothing to do, his nose was in the air, but when there was trouble, he was faster than anyone else to hide. Su Yu would not tolerate his bad habits. Get lost. Xiao Mingyuan did not dare to attack in the spell formation, but Su Yu did not. Su Yu had not only mastered physical attacks, but also the ancestral technique of the Soul Saint clan, which had cultivated the secret soul techniques to the extreme. His eyes suddenly spat out a beam of grayish-white soul light, which pierced into Du Yu's head. The strength of his soul, after fusing with the Soul Saint clan's first ancestor, had almost reached the level of an all-saint. Apart from top-notch great saints like Ancestor Guy Tian and Ancestor Reincarnation, it would be difficult for anyone else to withstand the soul attack. Although Du Yu was a late-stage great saint, he was very weak. How could he withstand the soul attack? Ah! With a shrill scream, Du Yu, who had insisted on staying, immediately clutched his head and howled in pain. His soul had been severely injured. If one could see through his body, one would realize that Du Yu's soul had been split into two. It was only a matter of time before he died. Su Yu's soul attack was on the soul level, so it would not harm the spell formation in the slightest. The Sword Saint clan will not let you off. Du Yu cursed, knowing that he was about to die. Su Yu's face was expressionless, and he calmly said, "You can say that to anyone, but it might not apply to me, because I was the one who destroyed your sacred sword tribe." Su Yu said indifferently. Hearing this, Du Yu's pupils constricted. The Sword Sacred clan had once been like the sun at high noon, but ever since they were refining the absolute heaven sword, an uninvited and mysterious guest had caused trouble, causing the absolute heaven sword to be lost and several clan elders to die. The entire manor that the Sword Sacred clan had built over several epochs had been burned to the ground by the tribulation fire. Not only that, the famed Sword Sacred clan deceived many great sages and spread the news of them sacrificing their blood to the absolute heaven sword, causing a huge uproar. The great sage clans that had been sacrificed had banded together to attack the famed Sword Sacred clan. The other families also maintained a relationship with the Sword Sacred clan because of this matter. After all, they even dared to offer blood sacrifices to great sages. Who would dare to deal with them? Right now, they were already on the decline. All of this was thanks to the mysterious person who stole the absolute heaven sword. You're the one who stole the absolute heaven sword? Although Du Yu was in the Human Race Alliance at that time and was not in his family, he also hated Du Yu very much after hearing the message from the elders of his family. He wanted nothing more than to tear the other party into 1,000 pieces. Yes, Su Yu said calmly. His eyes once again condensed two solid beams of soul light, which pierced deeply into Du Yu's head. So go in peace. Your clansmen will soon join you in hell. The two soul attacks had completely destroyed Du Yu's soul. His eyes were still filled with intense resentment and hatred, and he lost all signs of life. In fact, he had no intention of arguing with a junior of the famed Sword Sacred clan. He had never intended to kill him. Instead, Du Yu had recklessly charged forward again and again, and now he was trying to interfere with his life and death. Since that was the case, he could not blame Su Yu for being merciless. Xiao Mingyuan was shocked by Su Yu's secret soul technique. A strong man of the later stage of the Great Sage realm had actually been killed by a soul attack. This was the legendary Soul Sacred clan. Only some old monsters at the level of an ancestor could achieve such a feat. How did Su Yu do it at such a young age? In Xiao Mingyuan's eyes, Su Yu was full of mysteries, and he had not been able to see through him. However, he reacted quickly. Without another word, he stepped forward and kicked Du Yu's corpse away. The moment the corpse was left in the formation tacitly recognized it as three people. Bang! Du Yu's corpse was tossed high into the air. But at that moment, something strange happened. The formation shook violently. Xiao Mingyuan and Su Yu felt the world spin, as if it had been turned upside down. Su Yu's body was like a chair, unable to stabilize himself. When his vision changed and his feet stabilized on the ground, he realized that he had been stabbed into the ground. What he saw was the rapidly clenching 9 demonic fingers, as well as the rapidly disappearing formation. He had been thrown out. The formation had randomly thrown Suyu out of the formation. Not good. Suyu did not dare hesitate. Seeing that the formation was about to disappear, he used the secret space technique without another word, attempting to teleport into the formation. However, the advantage of the Mirror Clan's escape technique formation was that it could teleport far away and activate quickly. Suyu looked at where he had teleported. The formation had stopped operating, and the ball of white light had disappeared without a trace. All that was left were the formation flags and materials scattered all over the ground. Although he could activate it one more time, did he have the time? The 9 demonic fingers came crashing down, crushing the entire Duantian Mountain area into nothingness. He could not stay here any longer unless he wanted to perish together with the Duantian Mountain. However, Ancestor Guy Tion and the Reincarnation King must have been waiting for him outside. If it was just one of them, so you could use the blue hard iron puppet to put up a fight. However, there were 2 of them, and it was almost impossible to resist. Caught in a dilemma, Suyu's mind was racing, and his brain was spinning rapidly with all kinds of possibilities. All kinds of possible scenarios, all kinds of possibilities of survival, appeared clearly in his brain like a spider's web. With his ability to calculate, he could now see through the entire situation in an instant. Suddenly, he found a hope of survival. His eyes changed abruptly, and he shot a glance at the 9th peak. No, it was the tip of the 9th demonic finger. The reason the 9-finger demonic palm had appeared was because the formation had been unintentionally punished by Lu Su and had begun to operate. According to Su Yu's speculation, that place was most likely the legendary tomb of the master of the ultimate ruins. The level of danger there was undeniable. Even a mighty, all-saint strongman had returned from that place with severe injuries. He had been bullied by dogs and had been hunted down by Ancestor Guy Tion and the Reincarnation King, who were both half a step to the all-saint level. Chapter 31-39. With Su Yu's current cultivation, trespassing into the tomb of the master of the returning ruins would only result in death. However, if they left, they would most likely die, but if they stayed, they would most likely die. Hence, Su Yu made a decisive decision. He immediately rushed to the rotating formation and jumped into it before the demonic finger crushed him. The space energy that gushed out of the formation was extraordinarily powerful, and it transported Su Yu away in a split second. In terms of speed, it was much faster than Xiaoming Yuan's unique escape technique. Rumble. At this moment, the 9 demon fingers clenched their fists tightly, turning the so-called broken sky mountain region into ruins. Smoke and dust rose everywhere, blotting out the sky and covering the earth, filling the 9 states. Patriarch of Guy Tion and Reincarnation King, who were at the periphery, did not dare to open their eyes in the face of the overwhelming smoke and dust. They squinted their eyes, trying to see whether Su Yu would come out. However, even after the dust settled and the world became clear, Su Yu was still nowhere to be seen. The 2 of them looked at each other and immediately entered the ruins. At this moment, the 9-fingered demonic palm had been completely crushed. It had lost all signs of life and could no longer move. Even the pressure was gone, so Patriarch Guy Tion and the Reincarnation King could calmly enter without worrying about being inexplicably destroyed. The 2 of them searched through the ruins and met up again. Did you discover it? Human King Samsara was exceptionally concerned. Such a powerful member of the same race was definitely a great calamity for him. Patriarch Guy Tion came back with half a corpse and threw it on the ground. I only found him. It was Duyue. When his body was thrown out, it happened to be the moment when the formation was activated, so it was cut into 2 parts by the formation. Apart from that, there is also a very mysterious teleportation formation. Patriarch Guy Tion said in a deep voice, "If I'm not wrong, he has already left the range of my curse." Hearing this, Human King of Samsara frowned. Where did he come from? Why is he here? His heart was filled with worry. Forget it. Since he has already escaped, we can only hurry up and head to the tomb of the ultimate Emperor Lord to see if we can find anything before he leaks the news. If that's the case, it will be 100 benefits and no harm to your journey to the heavenly road. Human King Samsara looked around and sighed unwillingly. This is the only way. Their ultimate goal was to enter the human emperor's tomb and search for opportunities. Hunting down Suyu was just a minor detail. The two of them arrived in front of the array formation of the ninth finger. Although the devil finger had lost its life force, the array formation had already been fully activated, and a dense clear light was circulating around it. After the two of them looked at each other, they took a deep breath and jumped in. Meanwhile, in a faraway place, a spatial fluctuation appeared without warning. Xiao Mingyuan fell out, along with half of Du Yu's corpse. Putong! Xiao Mingyuan's body was sore and weak. He didn't even have the strength to stand up. However, when he noticed that it wasn't Suyu who had fallen along with the weapon, but Du Yu's half-corpse, his face darkened. He stood there silently and sighed deeply. The heavens are jealous of the talented. A mysterious young expert had died a tragic death on Mount Duantian. Thinking of Suyu's various powers, he felt that it was a great pity. After sighing with emotion for a long time, Xiao Mingyuan observed the surrounding environment and discovered that this was an extremely strange area. The four corners of the sky were filled with 8 strange colors. Each color represented a domain. Furthermore, each domain had traces of the ancestral magic. This is the ancestral magic of the 8 great domains. Xiao Mingyuan gasped. He finally understood why he had experienced such violent turbulence during the teleportation process, which had left him exhausted and sore all over. It turned out that the space domain was affecting his teleportation. He couldn't believe that the ancestral magic of any of the great domains were in the hands of the 8 great saint clans. Some of them had even been lost, and even they couldn't master them. But now, there were ancestral magic of the 8 great domains, all released here. However, his many years of experience had made Xiao Mingyuan extremely vigilant, and he instinctively sensed danger. There couldn't be 8 ancestral magic of the 8 great domains here for no reason. It was better for him to leave as soon as possible. With that in mind, he took a step forward like an arrow released from a bow. However, after a few steps, he passed by a deep pit and glanced at it casually. He couldn't help but feel his scalp go numb. The deep pit was densely packed with corpses. Furthermore, all of them were corpses of powerful experts. They were at least of the great saint level. Xiao Mingyuan could even feel an aura that made his skin crawl. It was a corpse that looked like a stone man. It was covered in wounds, but it had already lost its life. 10,000 saints. Xiao Mingyuan gasped. How could there be so many corpses of powerful experts here? There were even 10,000 saints. Most inconceivable of all was that the corpses were fresh and had died not long ago. Xiao Mingyuan's scalp went numb. He felt as if there were countless blood-sucking bugs all over his body, causing goosebumps to rise all over his body. His heart was filled with a deep sense of fear. He didn't dare to hesitate and immediately ran outside. However, what made him feel despair was that he couldn't leave the area sealed by the ancestral magic of the 8 great domains. No matter how he attacked, the ancestral magic of the 8 great domains did not budge. He was like a rabbit that had fallen into a trap and could only wait for misfortune to come. The misfortune didn't delay for long. Just as Xiao Mingyuan was thinking of a way to escape, a mocking and greedy voice entered his ears. Another one has fallen. Unfortunately, he's too weak and can only fill the gaps between my teeth. Xiao Mingyuan's body trembled. He looked up, and his pupils shrank. Above his head, a 9-color dragon was poking half of its head out of the domain. A pair of greedy eyes was sizing up Xiao Mingyuan, and they were filled with greed. Xiao Mingyuan's body trembled. You are... He had never seen such a strange thing in his life. It was said to be a living creature, but it lacked the vitality of a living creature. It was said to be a puppet, but it had the intelligence of a living creature. It was said to be an energy, but it was like a living creature. The enormous body of the 9-colored giant dragon crawled over slowly from the outside world. Its body was extremely huge, and it was at least 10,000 feet long. However, Its body was full of injuries, and there were black scars everywhere. The injury on its neck was the most serious, and it had almost been cut in half. I have no name. The nine-colored giant dragon floated in the air, looking down at Xiaoming Yuan. It opened its bloody mouth slowly. However, I used to be a domain. It was none other than the ninth realm, who had escaped after being injured. Just as Suyu had guessed, it had been hiding and strengthening itself in secret. To achieve this, it had not hesitated to hunt down strong men from all over the world. The 8 great domains in front of Suyu were a trap it had set up. It had intercepted all the strong men passing by, and then surrounded and killed them. Perhaps because its mouth was wide open, its injuries were aggravated. The ninth realm grimaced in pain, and it glanced at Wan Sheng's corpse in the deep pit. Almost lost my life to eat this fellow, the ninth realm murmured, recommending my friend's new book, Wrath of the Holy Eves. It's a hot-blooded fantasy and worth reading. If you like it, please vote for it and leave a comment. Chapter 3140. Hearing this, Xiaoming Yuan sucked in a breath of cold air. The thing in front of him could even eat a strong fighter of the 10,000 saints. What kind of existence was it? All right, just accept your fate. Be a good boy and let me eat you. You'll die a quick death. The ninth realm opened its giant mouth again and bit down without hesitation. Just as it was about to bite Xiaoming Yuan, its giant head suddenly stopped. It froze on top of Xiaoming Yuan's head and sniffed him. This sniff almost sucked Xiaoming Yuan into its nostrils. What a familiar smell. The ninth realm's giant eyes slowly narrowed. It stared at Xiaoming Yuan, causing him to break out in cold sweat. His body was stiff, and he didn't dare to move. He was afraid that if he moved, the ninth realm's dragon mouth would bite him. Have you seen someone called Suyu? The ninth realm's eyes narrowed into slits. It was filled with a deep sense of greed. Suyu? Xiaoming Yuan shook his head. No, I've never heard of this person. Are you lying to me? The ninth realm's head drooped down. Its giant mouth was filled with the stench of blood. It exhaled hot air that blew at Xiaoming Yuan. Elder, I really don't know Suyu, Xiaoming Yuan said. I wonder what the Suyu you speak of looks like. The ninth realm was sure that Xiaoming Yuan wasn't lying. It raised its head and looked into the distance. It snorted. Not many people know what he looks like. However, he is a being like me, who has mastered the 8 great realms. However, the ninth realm had mastered the ultimate ancestral technique. Suyu had only mastered the soul ancestral technique. Hearing this, Xiaoming Yuan was shocked. Elder, are you talking about Inu? He had seen Inu use the soul ancestral technique to easily kill Duyu. Inu should be his pseudonym. The ninth realm's dragon eyes opened. They were filled with excitement. I can't believe he is still alive. How strong is he now? The ninth realm suddenly asked. Xiaoming Yuan thought for a moment, then shook his head. I'm not sure, but I saw with my own eyes that a great saint in the late stage was killed by him using the soul ancestral technique. Huh? Ninth realm suddenly raised his head and laughed. I underestimated this human. His power increased so much. The ninth realm wasn't the only one whose strength had skyrocketed. Suyu, who was also from an 8-star civilization, had also experienced a surge in strength. As it laughed, the ninth realm swung its long tail and destroyed all the domains around it. Why not nurture them yourself? The ninth realm's huge dragon eyes shone with a profound light. After devouring for the past few years, it gradually realized that it wanted to break through the limits of the domain and cultivate the legendary absolute beginning force to become one of the 13 supremes of heaven and earth. There was a limit to just relying on devouring experts. Devouring would only make his domain purer, but once it reached a certain level of purity, it would be hard for it to change. For example, it had risked its life to eat that 10,000 saints expert. But what was the result? He almost lost his life, but his domain didn't improve at all. After pondering for a few months, he gradually understood that devouring energy was useless in order to achieve a supreme domain. He wanted to devour the domain. It was the same domain as him. Only the fusion of 2 extremely powerful domains could give birth to the mysterious primordial force. Now, because it had stolen the remnant of the ultimate divine monument, its domain had become extremely powerful. It needed another creature with the 8 great ancestral techniques that was also extremely powerful. Young man, I won't kill you, but as the price for not dying, you have to listen to my orders from now on, the 9th realm threatened him. Xiao Mingyuan was overjoyed. He didn't dare to disobey. I'm willing to follow your lead. The 9th realm laughed. Do you know where the Space Saint clan is? I do. Then use your escape technique to take me there, the 9th realm said. Xiao Mingyuan was stunned. He asked tentatively, Are you going to visit them? The 9th realm smiled. His smile was full of cruelty. Yes, I'm going to ask them for something. Back to Suyu. After the teleportation, he felt like the world was spinning and his head was spinning. It was as if he had been teleported for a whole day and night. Suyu finally landed on the ground with a dull thud. His body smashed into an extremely sturdy boulder, creating a deep pit in the surface of the boulder. Hiss! Suyu took a light breath. He resisted the discomfort in his body and got up instinctively to observe his surroundings. He didn't forget that he was teleported to the extremely dangerous tomb of the ultimate ruins Emperor Master. Even the most ordinary plants here could kill him without him noticing. However, Suyu couldn't help but be stunned when he looked around. He was surrounded by people in all directions. All of them stared at Suyu with dumbfounded expressions. Their eyes were filled with shock and sluggishness. Suyu looked around and found that he was above an ancient altar. There were strange symbols around his body. Those symbols still had a huge amount of energy left in them. In a split second, Suyu understood that his teleportation must have intersected with the teleportation of the nearby space. He was supposed to be teleported to the tomb of the ultimate ruins Emperor Master, but he was summoned here by the altar. Suyu heaved a sigh of relief. It was best not to go to such a dangerous place like the tomb of the ultimate ruins Emperor Master. It seemed like he was lucky. He thought he was going to die. Now, not only did he leave the Duantian mountain area, but he also avoided the tomb. It was a pity that he didn't get to see the tomb of the ultimate ruins Emperor Master. As the owner of the ultimate ruins divine steel, Suyu wanted to find the answer to why the ultimate ruins Emperor Master left the tomb. Ahem, everyone, I'm just passing by. Sorry for disturbing you. Facing the crowd, Suyu's top priority was to leave first. Wah, sob sob sob. Suddenly, a 14-year-old girl in a red dress in the crowd burst into tears. She wiped her tears with both hands and burst into tears. Why am I so unlucky? Sob sob sob. The girl cried even more sadly. The primordial stones that my grandfather accumulated for 100 years were all wasted. How am I going to report back? Sob sob sob. Suyu was startled. Why was she crying? But it didn't matter. He cupped his fists in all directions and quickly walked down the altar. Unexpectedly, as soon as he stepped out of the range of the symbols, they all came to life. They peeled off from the ground and floated in the air. They connected with each other head to tail, forming a circle. Then, they suddenly wrapped around Suyu's neck. Suyu suddenly felt his neck tighten. At the same time, something was embedded in his soul, restraining it tightly. This is an enslavement symbol? Suyu recognized it immediately, and the corners of his mouth twitched. There were strong and weak enslavement symbols. The enslavement symbol in front of him should be one of the more powerful ones. At least, it wouldn't be a problem to enslave a great saint late-stage strongman. Chapter 3141. Of course, it was useless to Suyu. His soul now contained a trace of the soul of an all-saint. This rune was far from enough to enslave him. With that thought in mind, Suyu grabbed the rune on his neck, wanted to tear it off, and quickly get away from them. However, Suyu suddenly found a familiar figure behind the crowd. His body trembled violently, and he froze on the spot, his eyes full of disbelief. Behind the crowd, the people nearby were discussing noisily, but only an elegant young woman in a black gauze dress was sitting on a rock, quietly reading a book. Her expression was serene, as if she was isolated from the noisy world. Her breathtakingly beautiful facial features were like luminous pearls in the dark altar, releasing a fatal attraction. In his life, Suyu had only seen one person with such a beautiful face. That was Xia Jingyu. Suyu couldn't believe that he had inadvertently been transported to appear in front of Xia Jingyu. The last time they met was when Suyu had just arrived at the 9-star civilization. He didn't expect to see her again. "Tell me, who are you? Why did you disturb our training?" A burly young man beside the crying girl scolded. His cultivation was at the middle stage of the Great Saint realm, and he didn't bother to hide it. "Training?" Suyu looked at them, and then at Xia Jingyu, who was silently reading a book. He put down the hand that was holding the rune after a moment of hesitation. He cupped his fists and said, "Sorry, I was transported here by accident. I didn't mean to disturb you." He pointed to the rune on his neck. "Can I trouble you to remove the enslavement rune?" When the burly young man saw that Suyu was so easy to talk to, he became even more aggressive. "Remove it, my ass. Where did you put Miss Song's protective beast? Tell me." "Protective beast?" It should be some kind of beast that should have been transported to the altar. Now, it should have replaced Suyu and been transported to the tomb of the ultimate Emperor Master. It was highly likely that it had been eaten by the ferocious creatures in the tomb. Suyu touched his nose. "This is a misunderstanding. I was in the process of being transported too. How could I know that I would be transported here by coincidence? I hope you don't take offense. How about this? I am willing to compensate Miss Song. He still had a lot of good stuff on him. For example, the blue hard iron. Any one of them would be more expensive than any protective beast. Compensate? How are you going to compensate me?" Seeing this, the burly young man's tone became a little better. At the same time, he winked at the little girl. What he meant was that since things had come to this point, there was no point in being sad. It was better to ask for some practical benefits. "I am not talented, but I have some resources that might be of help to you." So he was thinking of giving the other party a piece of blue hard iron. But who knew that the weeping girl would be unusually persistent? "I don't want resources, I just want my protective beast." "Give me back my protective beast." Whoa. The corner of Suyu's mouth twitched. He is a patient person, but the unreasonable person is an exception. Where could he find another protective beast? Could he go to the sinkhole Emperor's tomb to find one? If it wasn't for Xia Jingyu, he wouldn't have wanted to fall out with this group of people before him. "I can't change back into a body-protecting beast, but if you want anything, just tell me." Suyu controlled his temper. But the girl only knew how to cry and didn't know how to solve the problem. The youths nearby were getting impatient. "What are you doing? Hurry up and tell us what you want. You're wasting our time." "That's right. We need to summon our own protective beasts." While he was being urged, the robust man became anxious. He looked at the crying young girl, then looked at Suyu. He then comforted her and said, "Miss Song, why don't you let this person be your protective beast? He forced your protective beast away and was enslaved by the enslavement rune. Maybe it's the will of the heavens." The weeping girl sneaked a glance at Suyu. Feeling the urging of the people nearby, she could only hold back her tears and resentfully say, "This. All right." She bit her red lips, looking extremely aggrieved. The burly young man let out a sigh of relief and glared at Suyu. "Did you hear that? Hurry up and greet your master." Suyu was furious. She wanted to make him a protective beast. Just as he was about to tear off the runes, he suddenly raised his head and met Xia Jingyu's gaze. Xia Jingyu had raised her head and was quietly looking at Suyu. There was a hint of contemplation in her eyes, as if she was doubting something. Seeing that, Suyu calmly withdrew his hand and walked down the altar to stand in front of the little girl. "All right, if you don't mind, I will protect you for a period of time." Suyu cupped his fists at her, his expression extremely courteous. Miss Song was obviously still angry. She glared at Suyu with resentment. "You must call me master." Her hands were on her waist, and her eyes were wide open. Her black and white pupils were wide open. At first glance, she looked like a dancing peacock. Suyu smiled and bowed with his fists cupped. Yes, little master. It's master, not little master. Who asked you to add more words?" Miss Song stamped her feet. Suyu changed his words and tried to be as serious as possible. "Yes, master. That's more like it. Humph." Miss Song rubbed her nose and looked Suyu up and down. "What's your cultivation?" What's your race? So you told her everything he knew. Same as Master, I'm a human. My cultivation is at the early stage of the ancient saint. So you suddenly realized that most of the people who came were humans. Only a few were from other races like Xiaojingyu. Ah, the early stage of the ancient saint? You're not lying to me, are you? Miss Song was so shocked that her jaw almost dropped. Show me your cultivation. So you honestly showed her his cultivation of the early stage of the ancient saint. At the same time, he said, How is it? I'm not bad, am I? I'm already at the early stage of the ancient saint. Miss Song's face was already livid. Her eyes, which had just dried up, were filled with mist again. After a while, they finally turned into tears. Oh, why is my life so bitter? Oh, the burly young man next to her had no words to comfort her. He could not help but blame Suyu. Why are you so weak? You're only at the early stage of the ancient saint. Uft. You can't even catch up to Miss Song. She was born with the cultivation of an ancient saint. The speaker did not mean it, but the listener did. Suyu's heart skipped a beat. Born with the early stage of the ancient saint? What kind of physique was that? Even the children of the 10,000 saints might not be born with the cultivation of an ancient saint. It turned out that this inconspicuous little girl in front of him had a powerful background. Hey, release the enslavement spell and let me go. I don't want to be a burden to my master, Suyu sighed. No. Miss Song raised her head abruptly and said stubbornly, I'll turn you into a strong person. Sit down. Oh, what's she trying to do? Is she trying to help Suyu improve his cultivation? Chapter 3142. Sit down quickly. Miss Song urged as she took out a broken vat. It looked ancient, covered in mud, and even stained with ancient blood. If it were outside, no one would even look at it. However, there were 2 words on the vat, which made Suyu unable to take his eyes off it. Guishu. After the 2 words, there was the word palace. Miss Song placed it in front of Suyu and said with a pained tone, You've really lucked out. Let me tell you, this is a treasure that I accidentally obtained. There is a mysterious energy in it. If you can absorb a little of it, you can easily make a breakthrough in your cultivation. Suyu looked inside, but his eyes could not penetrate it. He tried to use his soul eyes, but it was still blocked outside, unable to see anything. He could only see darkness inside the vat. Put your hand in, and you will feel a special energy. Miss Song crossed her arms in front of her waist and said, The process will be a little painful, but the longer you persist, the deeper your hand goes, and the more you can obtain. Hurry up, Little Song hurriedly urged. Suyu hesitated for a moment, then put a finger in. Suddenly, an intense pain assaulted him, as if a poisonous snake had bitten his finger and was about to bite it off. Subconsciously, Suyu wanted to pull his finger out. However, at that moment, a special energy flowed into his abdomen, loosening the cultivation of the ancient saint who had just broken through. He was delighted. Normally, it would take at least a dozen years to raise the cultivation of an ancient saint to the next level, and at most tens of thousands of years. There were so many strong ancient saints, but it was difficult for them to take a step forward. Even if they encountered an opportunity, they might not be able to break through in a short time. However, the ancient vat in front of him was simply nature-defying. Suyu's heart thumped. If he let go of such a nature-defying opportunity, he would be as stupid as a pig. Swoosh! Regardless of the consequences, Suyu put his arm into the deepest part of the ancient vat. His fingers touched the bottom of the ancient vat, and a layer of wet, sticky, and exceptionally cold sensation assaulted him. What followed was a heart-wrenching pain. It was as if countless embroidery needles were piercing Suyu's arm back and forth. Moreover, the range of the pain grew larger and deeper. At 3 breaths, Suyu could still persist with his extraordinary willpower. After 6 breaths, his body was already numb, and even his soul began to feel a stabbing pain. Young Miss Song was startled. She came back to her senses and hastily said, Are you crazy? Why did you reach in so deep? The spiritual liquid at the bottom will kill you if you touch it. She was extremely flustered. Even in her family, no one dared to extend their arms to the bottom. It was said that the blood that flowed within was the pet of the sinkhole divine lord, the Tao Tai. If an ordinary person touched it, they would definitely be devoured. Even the ancestor was extremely fearful of it and did not dare to touch it with his body. Sure enough, a layer of faintly discernible black air current appeared around Suyu, causing the air to boil and shake. It was as if the space around him was about to disappear without a trace along with him. "Stop! You're about to be devoured." Little Song didn't dare to go over and could only shout in panic. Suyu was indifferent to this. He frantically absorbed the mysterious energy from the ancient cauldron, and his cultivation base of early ancient sage skyrocketed. On the 9th breath, there was an explosion in his body. He had broken through. Ancient sage, intermediate stage. However, the skyrocketing of his cultivation base did not stop, and it continued to soar. At the same time, the sharp pain from his soul soared. He had lost all feeling in his limbs, and if he lost all feeling in his soul due to the pain, he would die. However, this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. How could Suyu let it go? He gritted his teeth and allowed the pain in his soul to intensify, using his strengthened soul power to resist the pain. Fortunately, he had interacted with the first ancestor of the Soul Saint clan, so his soul was not what it used to be. It was close to the level of an all-saint. Therefore, although the pain was intense, it had not reached the point where it would collapse. 12 breaths. Suyu was still gritting his teeth and persisting. Young Miss Song's anxiety turned into surprise. Why was he not dead yet? A strong man of the late great saint dared to persevere like him for less than 10 breaths. Another 3 breaths passed, and a full 15 breaths passed. Suyu was still safe and sound. On the contrary, within the ancient cauldron, the sound of the Tao Ye's divine blood being sucked could be heard faintly. Hey, that's enough. Stop. Young Miss Song should not be worried about Suyu, but her own treasure. If the Tao Ye's divine blood was sucked dry, the ancient cauldron would lose its function. "Master, I can't stop," Suyu said with great difficulty. He looked like he was in pain. With a peerless and nature-defying opportunity in front of him, Suyu certainly could not stop. What? Is it because of the divine blood inside? Young Miss Song asked anxiously. Suyu felt guilty and tried to change the topic. Ouch. It hurts. To others, the Tao Ye's divine blood was an extremely dangerous existence. But to Suyu, it was nothing. He had the Tao Ye's eye between his brows and a sickle made of the Tao Ye's bones in his hand. Just a little bit of the Tao Ye's divine blood would be absorbed by the Tao Ye's eye after it entered his body. The only thing he had to worry about was whether the Tao Ye's eye could still be suppressed after absorbing enough God's blood. He could already feel the Tao Ye's eye between his brows, which had been sealed, stirring. A feeling of swelling arose spontaneously. Suyu could even feel a strange breath from the depths of his soul. It was the Tao Ye's eye that was awakening. Previously, in order to fight against the holy mountain and destroy the world, Suyu released the Tao Ye's eye. After absorbing the endless power of the holy mountain, it fell into a deep sleep. When it woke up again, the blood paper might not be able to seal it again. Thinking of this, Suyu knew it was time to stop. Otherwise, the loss would outweigh the gain. 18 breaths. There was another burst of sound in his body. His cultivation had broken through again. The ancient saint late stage. Suyu was full of regret. If only he could absorb it for a little longer, he would be willing to endure hellish torture. Suddenly, Suyu's heart skipped a beat. That's right. Didn't he still have the great sickle of 10,000 tribulations? Similarly, the great sickle of 10,000 tribulations could also absorb divine blood. The great sickle of 10,000 tribulations that absorbed divine blood would not do any harm to him. Swish! The great sickle of 10,000 tribulations appeared in his hand. As expected, its appearance instantly accelerated the absorption of the Tao Ye's blood. The Tao Ye's divine blood in the ancient cauldron quickly entered Suyu's body and then flowed into the great sickle of 10,000 tribulations along his arm. For a moment, the Tao Ye's eye could not snatch it and fell into a deep sleep again. Not only that, the Tao Ye's divine blood did not stop when it passed through Suyu's body, so it no longer caused any harm. The pain immediately disappeared without a trace. However, Su Yu's cultivation, because the Tao Ye's divine blood entered his body, was still soaring. Not only did he not have to bear the pain, but his cultivation could also soar. So you could not help but moan in comfort. Chapter 31:43. Are you feeling good? A questioning look was cast at Su Yu. He clenched his teeth again and pretended to be in pain. How could it be Ouch, it hurts. I'm dying. I'm the one who's dying. Miss Song's little face was very long. She just disliked Su Yu's low cultivation and wanted him to improve his cultivation a little bit. It was really just a little bit. Who would have thought that he was improving nonstop? Sizzle, 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 sizzle. Su Yu finally stopped when the liquid at the bottom of the ancient vat was sizzling. The Tao Ye's divine blood had been sucked clean. His cultivation had advanced further and reached the peak of the ancient saint. If he had the right opportunity, he could break through to the level of the great saint. Cultivation is really easy. This was the first time in his life that Su Yu felt this way. He was not the only one who had undergone great changes. The great sickle of 10,000 calamities had also undergone great changes. After absorbing a layer of the Tao Ye's divine blood, the great sickle of 10,000 calamities had become much heavier. Although there were no visible changes on the outside, if it was activated, it would definitely be different from before. The black air around Su Yu's body disappeared, and Miss Song ran over with vigorous steps. She hugged the ancient vat and shook it. It was empty and there was no sound. Her little face darkened even more. She clenched her teeth and plucked up her courage. She put her finger into the ancient vat, but there was no longer any pain. Unwilling to give up, she probed the deepest part bit by bit, but there was no pain until she reached the bottom. Wah, my baby! Miss Song hugged the ancient vat and sat on the ground, crying loudly. She was very sad. Even Su Yu, who had a heart of stone, could not help but feel guilty. This was the second time he had made the little girl cry. Master, don't be too pessimistic. Although the ancient vat has lost its effect, I've become much stronger. Su Yu brandished his fists. Miss Song cried even more sadly. I will be beaten to death. She really did not expect that there would be such a ruthless person in the world who sucked up all the energy in the ancient vat in one breath. Don't cry, don't cry. I'll buy you some candy later. Su Yu squatted down and stroked her head comfortingly. Go to hell. Young Miss Song's eyes were red and watery. Su Yu was embarrassed. Now that things have come to this, my condolences. Think about it. If I die, who will protect you in the tomb of the ultimate emperor? The others all have protective beasts. Young Miss Song seemed to be moved. After sobbing a few times, she asked with tears in her eyes, Then what realm have you broken through to? A proud look appeared on Su Yu's face. Peak Ancient Saint. This was the highest cultivation he had ever achieved. Only Ancient Sage Pinnacle? Little Song opened her mouth wide. She was about to cry again. You've drained the ancient vat dry. Why are you still in the ancient sage realm? You're not even as good as me. How are you going to protect me? Su Yu rubbed his nose. To be precise, most of the Tao Tai's divine blood was sucked away by the great sickle of 10,000 calamity. He himself couldn't bear that much. I'm very satisfied. I'm not satisfied, Little Song said fiercely. I really want to kill you. However, he could not bear to do so. After all, he had already invested a treasure into his body. If he were to be killed, wouldn't it all be a waste? However, his cultivation was still too low. In the ultimate ruins, it would be of no use at all. What kind of Taoist artifacts do you usually use? Little Song asked as she sized Su Yu up. She could no longer help Su Yu improve his cultivation. She could only consider other things besides improving his cultivation to enhance his overall strength. Su Yu's eyes lit up. Without hesitation, he took out a worn-out iron sword. This, little Miss Song, was actually a very cultured and kind-hearted girl. However, looking at the worn-out iron sword, her body twitched. She could not help but clench her fists tightly. If I could turn back time, I would definitely kill you. Damn it. Too despicable, too despicable, too shameless. He was obviously trying to swindle something good from her. However, she did not have to cry over a worn-out iron sword. It was an insult to her intelligence. I'm sorry, master. My incompetence has made you angry. Suyu sighed. Little song stuck out her chest. Humph. Come on. Aren't you trying to swindle my treasure? Fine, I'll give you a chance. With a swipe of her finger, the space storage device flashed, and a burlap bag appeared on the ground. This is a treasure discovered by my ancestor. It can be used for both offense and defense. It is a very valuable treasure, Little Song said with a faint smile. Really? Suyu reached out to pick it up curiously. However, he did not expect it to be so heavy. He pulled subconsciously, but not only did he fail to pick it up, he almost stumbled. Suyu's cultivation was now at the peak of the ancient saint realm. His physical strength was naturally extraordinary. However, he could not even pick up such an inconspicuous item. Ha ha! Little Song covered her mouth and laughed nonstop. She said proudly, "This item is incomparably heavy. Not many people in my clan can lift it. If you can use it, I don't mind lending it to you," Little Song said calmly. "Aren't you trying to swindle my treasure? Fine, let's see if you have the ability to do so." Suyu thought for a moment. He first opened the burlap bag, and the item inside came into view. It was a small, unadorned cauldron with several cracks. The small cauldron was very old. There were various patterns drawn on it, and it gave off an ancient aura. Little Song raised her head and said, "This was obtained by my ancestor in an ancient ruin. According to his speculation, it should be a failed doctrine artifact. However, even if it failed, it still gives off peerless power. Unfortunately, there is no way to activate the small cauldron, so I can't use it." So he did not say a word. He silently placed his palm on the small cauldron. Little Song laughed. "All right, don't waste your energy. You can't pick it up." She waved her hand and recalled the small cauldron back into the space storage device. However, to her surprise, the small cauldron did not move at all. She could not recall it. The next scene caused him to freeze on the spot. Suyu was holding the small cauldron with one hand, and he could pick it up easily. Looking at the small cauldron, Suyu murmured, "We seem to know each other." He had seen the small cauldron in front of him in the hands of the human ancestor. It was a supreme sacred artifact he had used to kill the Saint Mountain's emperor, the Mountain and Mountain Cauldron. However, the cauldron in front of him was obviously not the real one, but a failed one. It could be imagined that the human ancestor had experienced many failures when he was crafting the River Mountain Cauldron. The failed one was accidentally obtained by Little Song's family, and they had kept it until now. They did not know how to control it, so it was naturally difficult for them to catch it. As for Suyu, he had received the human ancestor's teachings. He could even control the real River Mountain Cauldron, let alone the failed one. Could it be heaven's will? Suyu murmured. On the path of the human ancestor's teachings, he had obtained the failed saint artifact. Chapter 3144. Young Miss Song's eyes were wide open as she stared at Suyu in shock. She pointed at Suyu and stammered, "Ew." The little cauldron that even her ancestors couldn't pick up had been picked up by an unprepossessing little human. Could this be fake? The people around them also looked at Suyu with sharp eyes. Those who didn't know the little cauldron might not have thought much of it, but those who knew it were all shocked. What? Seeing that there were so many people around, Suyu weighed the little cauldron in his hand and put it back into the space storage device. Young Miss Song snapped out of her daze and said hurriedly, "Wait, give it to me. Hurry up." She didn't really want to give the little cauldron to Suyu. She was just taunting Suyu for taking out scrap metal. She wanted to use a treasure that he couldn't use to force him to take out his own doctrine artifact. But, unexpectedly, he picked it up. "Master, you said you could give it to me if I could carry it. Why can't you keep your word?" Suyu muttered, feeling wronged. Young Miss Song was so angry that her lungs were about to explode. "You, who exactly are you?" Suyu pointed at the enslavement symbol on his neck calmly. "I'm your substitute beast. Have you forgotten? You must be lying to me, right?" Young Miss Song felt that she had been fooled. Let's raise his cultivation and absorb all the energy in the vat, leaving not a single trace behind. Equip him with a doctrine artifact and take away her most precious little cauldron. She couldn't accept it. She really couldn't accept it. Suyu asked, "Do you have a nerve to go back on your words in front of everyone?" Of course, she was embarrassed. Young Miss Song was thin-skinned. Unlike Suyu, who was shameless. You. Young Miss Song gritted her teeth so hard that they creaked. If Suyu could make a dish out of it, she would probably grind his bones and eat him. Don't be like this. What's mine is yours. Whatever you give me will belong to you in the end, right? Suyu shook the enslavement symbol on his neck. Young Miss Song thought about it carefully and found that it made sense. Suyu was enslaved by her and could no longer escape from her control. He could be said to belong to her. What was the difference between having the tiny cauldron on him and having it on him? After comforting herself in this way, young Miss Song restrained her ashen face and snorted, "Consider yourself lucky. Come here." She brought Suyu with her and retreated to a corner, so as not to affect the rest of the people summoning their guardian beasts. "What's your name?" Young Miss Song was standing on a stone platform, her hands on her hips as she looked down at Suyu. Suyu's gaze shifted as he said, "My surname is Su, but my name? I forgot." "It's good that you forgot," little Miss Song said. "I'll give you one." She tilted her head and thought for a moment before saying, "I used to have 2 cute dogs, but they accidentally fell into the latrine and drowned. I've always missed them. Since you don't have a name, I'll call you Ergo." Su Ergo. Damn it. I quit. The name Su Ergo would be an indelible shame in his glorious life. "Wretched girl. How dare you use this name? I, Su, am not going to stand for it." Just as he was about to wave his hand, a soft, dreamy voice drifted over. "Miss Song." Young Miss Song cast a sidelong glance at the dreamy beauty who was walking over. She raised her snow-white chin with slight hostility. "Do you have any advice for me?" Xia Jingyu's beauty was well known throughout the entire 9-star civilization, especially in the reincarnation state. Everyone said that she was the most beautiful woman in the world, and even the emperor of the Holy Mountain coveted her. As a woman, young Miss Song was naturally indignant. Xia Jingyu looked at Suyu, who was dressed in a black robe. She said calmly and elegantly, "I'm just giving you a reminder. Speak." Young Miss Song raised her chin even higher. Xia Jingyu said calmly, "You can't control this person, so it's best not to use him." Her gaze was very calm, but it was extremely penetrating. It was as if she could see through the past and the future, leaving no place for people to hide. Suyu, who was about to wave his hand, immediately calmed down. Xia Jingyu seemed to be especially prejudiced against him. If he gave up now, it would be even more difficult for him to integrate into the current team. It would only be more difficult to get close to Xia Jingyu. Therefore, he could only bear with it. The premise was that young Miss Song was still willing to accept him. Fortunately, young Miss Song did not disappoint Suyu. She puffed out her chest and said proudly, "Humph, I don't need you to remind me how to use people. Just take care of yourself." Suyu was secretly amused. "Jingyu, oh Jingyu, you still don't know how to read people's minds." Although Xia Jingyu had mastered the domain of destiny and could see through a person's future, she had never studied people's minds. With young Miss Song's proud personality and the fact that she had been ridiculed by everyone, she was unusually sensitive. She would be displeased at the slightest bit of unpleasant words and deliberately act in the opposite direction. If Xia Jingyu had warned her in the beginning, young Miss Song might have considered it carefully. But now she would not. Xia Jingyu stood aloof from worldly affairs. Seeing young Miss Song's attitude, she smiled lightly and quietly turned around to return to her original position. Before leaving, she glanced at Suyu. Xia Jingyu's cold warning reached Suyu's ears. "No matter who you are, please behave yourself." At this moment, Suyu did not know whether to laugh or cry. He had never thought that one day he would be warned by Xia Jingyu. Looking at her cold face, Suyu wanted to protect her even more. The danger of the tomb of the ultimate ruins Emperor Master was beyond the imagination of these young people. Not only were there dangers from the tomb of the ultimate ruins Emperor Master, but there were also all kinds of terrible, ferocious beasts. The most troublesome thing was whether the 2 old things, the Reincarnation King and the old ancestor guy Tian, had entered the tomb of the ultimate ruins Emperor Master. Those 2 people were not easy to deal with. If he encountered this group of people, he might kill them all. Suyu did not care about the others, but he was worried about Xia Jingyu. "Wow, it's a 3-headed black flood dragon. She's so lucky. With it here, she can do whatever she wants in the ruins. Suddenly, a commotion broke out. Suyu looked up and found the fat, bald youth who was concerned about young Miss Song standing in front of the altar casting a spell. After a beam of light, a three-headed ferocious black flood dragon appeared on the altar. Its cultivation had reached the late stage of the Great Saint realm, comparable to Xiao Yuan. However, in Suyu's opinion, a creature of this level entering the tomb of the ultimate ruins Emperor Master would only serve as an appetizer for the ferocious beasts. The bald youth was pleased with himself. He took out a special space bag and put the three-headed black flood dragon into it. Then, he came in front of young Miss Song. "Miss, we don't have to worry anymore," the bald youth said with a laugh. Young Miss Song clapped her hands in surprise. "Great! My heart is finally at ease." As she spoke, she rolled her eyes at Suyu. Suyu did not care and quietly observed the summoning ceremony. As time passed, most of the people had finished summoning, and only a few had not started. Seeing that no one came forward, Xia Jingyu, who had been reading, finally put down the book and raised her head. Chapter 31:45. Get out of the way. Make way for Xia Fairy. A human youth in golden armor with a strong physique bellowed. He forcefully separated the tightly packed crowd and made a path for himself. His behavior naturally attracted a lot of dissatisfaction. However, when they looked at each other, the dissatisfied people put away their expressions and did not dare to confront him. "Xia Fairy, please." After clearing a path, the youth in golden armor extended his hand politely and invited Xia Jingyu to step onto the altar. Xia Jingyu put away the book in her hand. Her cold face remained the same. "Mr. Yu, after entering the tomb, we need to rely on each other. Such rudeness will only hurt the harmony between us." The youth in golden armor seemed to be defending Xia Jingyu, but in fact, such a rude action would only make people dislike Xia Jingyu. It put her in a disadvantageous position. Young Miss Song, who was already prejudiced against Xia Jingyu, immediately raised her head and said disdainfully, "Humph, how popular! Even the famous emperor of the human clan is willing to be a pawn in Mortal Yu City." The rest of the people did not say anything, but it was hard to guess what they were thinking. Xia Jingyu sighed silently and expressionlessly chose another path. She passed through the crowd and arrived at the altar. The golden-armored young man immediately followed and forcefully separated the people in the way. "Are you all blind? Don't you know how to make way for Xia Fairy?" When he passed by a male youth, he raised his hand and slapped him. When Xia Jingyu passed through the crowd, she accidentally touched him with her elbow. The youth in golden armor immediately taught her a lesson. He could not allow anyone to touch Xia Jingyu. This action caused many people to be angry. This was too much. How could Xia Jingyu pass through the crowd without causing any friction? How could she be beaten? However, they did not dare to blame the youth in golden armor because his status was too high, but they dared to blame Xia Jingyu. "Vixen, you only know how to attract people with your beauty. The goddess clan is such a disgusting clan." Wisps of soul communication spread through the crowd. Ordinary people might not be able to hear it, but with Suyu's soul mastery, he could hear it. He looked coldly at the mortal attraction city, and when he looked at Xia Jingyu again, he couldn't help but feel pity for her. What did Xia Jingyu do wrong? The mortal attraction city was in the wrong, but the blame was all on Xia Jingyu. The only reason was that she was too beautiful. Xia Jingyu seemed to have sensed it too. She turned her back to the crowd and remained silent for a moment. Then she took out a bottle of special energy and poured it on the altar on the ground. The altar immediately shone brightly as some sort of teleportation array was activated. When it was activated, Suyu could faintly feel a strange aura that he had never felt before. It was barbaric, ancient, and filled with an unknown sense of mystery. This was a feeling he had only experienced when he was a mortal facing a god. Ding! With a crisp sound, the formation rotated for a moment before the light dissipated. An emerald green firebird hovered in the air. It chirped and chirped, feeling that this place was very strange and strange. Seeing this, Xia Jingyu took out a talisman and shot it at him. On the neck of the emerald green firebird, A symbol similar to Su Yu's appeared. Then, the firebird obediently landed on Xia Jingyu's fingertip. Haha, it's the most useless jade fire undying bird. Little Song couldn't help but laugh out loud. Many people also let out gloating noises. Hee, isn't this kind of undying bird the most in the heavenly road? This bird is immortal. No matter how it is killed, it can always be resurrected. It seems powerful, but in fact, it has no other special abilities. It's a pity that she has such a beautiful face, but the heavens didn't bless her. With this bird, she will definitely die once she enters. Xia Jingyu looked at the jade fire undying bird, her eyes calm and unchanging. Although this bird had the cultivation of a great saint later stage, it didn't have much combat ability. In this unknown grave, the help it could provide was very limited. Xia Fairy, don't worry. Fan Qing stepped forward and comforted her. Since you are teaming up with me, of course I won't let you be in any danger. As long as I am here, I can guarantee your safety. As he spoke, he approached Xia Jingyu and tried to pat her shoulder to comfort her. Xia Jingyu raised her eyes and stared at him calmly. You did something, didn't you? Fan Qing's hand froze, and his expression became unnatural. Xia Fairy, what are you talking about? Xia Jingyu shook the empty energy bottle in her hand. The energy in this bottle shouldn't only be enough to summon one jade, fire, undying bird. I think you did something to the energy in the bottle, right? Xia Jingyu's eyes were deep. She was very calm, but also very cold. Fan Qing said calmly, Xia Fairy, do you have any evidence for what you said? Xia Jingyu said, among everyone here, the only person who can change energy is you. The reason why Fan Qing was feared was because he was born with a special physique that could change the nature of energy. He could make weak energy stronger. Strong energy could also be made weak. He could even change the nature of energy. It was extremely difficult to fight against him, and there was no way to break it. Even those with a higher cultivation than him would often suffer and not gain any advantage. Fan Qing had a calm smile on his face. Xia Fairy, I want evidence. Words alone are not enough. Xia Jingyu retracted her gaze and walked down the stairs silently without saying a word. She knew that it was Fan Qing's doing, but she had no evidence. Therefore, any argument would be unnecessary. Xia Fairy, you have nothing now. Are you sure you don't want to team up with me? Fan Qing's lips curled into an imperceptible, sinister smile. It was indeed him who did something. His purpose was very simple. Xia Jingyu had no one to rely on, so she could only rely on him. To enter the tomb, there must be a combination of yin and yang. Only when a man and a woman entered the crack together would they be able to enter safely. Otherwise, they would be forcefully pushed out by the crack. If they were unlucky, they might even be stuck in the crack and sealed to death. Initially, Xia Jingyu had reached an agreement with him through the introduction of the goddess clan. They would team up and enter together. After entering, they would have nothing to do with each other. But how could Fan Qing let go of this opportunity to get intimate with the world's most beautiful woman? Therefore, he completely disregarded the agreement and even used underhanded methods. Seeing that Xia Jingyu was ignoring him, Fan Qing stepped forward and reached out to put his hand on her shoulder. Unexpectedly, an invisible mental attack pierced into his soul without any warning. Fan Qing was unprepared. He felt a piercing pain in his head. With a groan, he retracted his hand and hugged his head. He looked around angrily. Who did this? Of course it was Su Yu. Su Yu did not kill him because he was giving Xia Jingyu some face. After all, he was Xia Jingyu's partner, and she needed to rely on him to enter the tomb. Otherwise, it would not have been as simple as a spiritual attack. Chapter 31:46. You don't dare to admit it, do you? Fan Qing narrowed his eyes and scanned the surroundings. However, no one dared to answer or admit it. His eyes flickered fiercely for a few times before he gave up and snorted. If I catch you, I'll teach you a lesson. Those who were observant could tell that Fan Qing's words had a tinge of cowardice. He had admitted defeat. Fan Qing did not dare not admit defeat. How could the mortal luring city not be afraid of a person who could silently injure his soul without him being able to detect the source? If this person suddenly attacked him while he was fighting against the enemy, it would be a fatal threat to his soul. When experts exchanged blows, victory and defeat could be decided in an instant. How could he allow his soul to be attacked? Naturally, he withdrew his hand that was about to touch Xia Jingyu's. As arrogant as he was, he immediately quieted down and became more obedient, not daring to continue making enemies for Xia Jingyu. Xia Jingyu was a little surprised by this. Her crystal-like eyes were also looking around. She felt very strange. Among the people who had come, Fanny Cheng was the most powerful and had the most fearsome methods. Who would secretly warn Fanny Cheng for her? Her gaze swept across them one by one, finally landing on the black-robed Suyu, who she could not see through. After pausing for a moment, she shook her head slightly. This person would not. Firstly, they had only met by chance and did not know each other. Secondly, she had just reminded Miss Song not to trust this person. It was good enough that he did not hate her. Why would he help her? It seems like there is a hidden expert among us, Xia Jingyu murmured softly. The rest of the people quickly completed the summoning and got the guardian beast they wanted. Fanny Cheng became lively again. Everyone, the guardian beasts have been summoned. Next, it will be a joint exploration of our many clans. He took out a scroll and unfolded it. There was a series of words written on it in flamboyant calligraphy. In this exploration, survival is the most important thing, followed by exploring the ruins. During the exploration, remember 3 things. First, everything that you find in the ruins will belong to you. You do not have to hand it over. This made the faces of the geniuses who had come. In the past, when the families organized large-scale explorations, most of the gains had to be handed over. Second, if there is an accident, try to abandon your body and escape with your soul. The body could still be reconstructed, but once the soul was destroyed, there was almost no cure. Third, help each other. You are not allowed to kill each other. If you are discovered, you will be severely punished. It seemed to be the last one, but it was actually the most important one. Killing for the sake of profit was commonplace in an expedition. Usually, most of the casualties in exploration did not come from the dangers in the ruins, but from the members of the exploration team killing each other. Everyone looked at each other in silence. However, amidst his silence, his guard was abnormally deep. Lastly, the scroll was signed by the elders of the various families and forces. It could be considered a joint announcement. Among them, the name of a person with the surname Yin was at the forefront. Without a doubt, he was an elder of the Mortal Attraction Cities clan. Moreover, his name was at the top, so his status was definitely not low. Everyone, let's go in. Fanny Cheng threw the scroll in the air. The scroll exploded in the air, and a cloud of dense air flowed out from it and landed on the stone wall opposite the altar. The color of the stone wall was completely different from ordinary stone walls. It was actually black and white on the left and right. It was only then that Su Yu noticed the stone wall. He could not help but release his soul eyes to look at it from top to bottom. With a single glance, he could not help but be shocked. The so-called giant mountain in front of him was actually not a mountain at all. It was a giant coffin with alternating black and white stripes. They were standing right in front of the coffin. The altar was not an ordinary altar, but a place of sacrifice. This is the tomb of the master of the ultimate ruins emperor. Suyu was secretly surprised. He had thought that he had been transported to an extremely faraway place, far away from the tomb of the ultimate ruins emperor. But it turned out that he was just outside the tomb. The dense airflow crashed against the stone door and actually forced open a small gap between the 2 huge black and white doors, just enough for 2 people to pass through. As you can see, the dense air is the energy of yin and yang. Only yin and yang can pass through. Otherwise, you will definitely be repelled. Fanny Cheng was the first to arrive in front of the narrow gap. He turned around and waved at Xia Jingyu. "Xia Fairy, please." Xia Jingyu's eyes were filled with a hint of disgust. If she had a choice, she would definitely not enter with Fanny Cheng. But who asked the goddess clan to choose him? Unexpectedly, just as she was about to move, young Miss Song took the lead and said, "I'll go first." As she spoke, she dragged Su Yu and the bald fatty to the front of the narrow gap. Su Yu was speechless. She even had a fight over who would go first. How jealous was young Miss Song of Xia Jingyu's beauty that she had a fight over everything with her. Wait! Fanny Cheng stretched out his hand to stop them, his eyes filled with ferocity. I said, I'll go first with Xia Fairy. Why should I? Young Miss Song was not afraid. Others might be afraid of you, but I'm not. She slapped Fanny Cheng's hand away with her small hand and pushed him aside without hesitation. She said loudly, Let's go. How could Fanny Cheng allow young Miss Song to be so presumptuous in front of everyone? Humph! His figure flashed, and he immediately blocked the stone door. He urged Xia Jingyu, Xia Fairy, come here quickly. The tomb was full of dangers. The further they went, the more activity they would cause, which would attract the attention of more unknown existences. Thus, the danger would increase. Xia Jingyu walked over helplessly and said unhurriedly, There's no need to fight. Just let young Miss Song go first. She really did not want to argue with people over such trivial matters. How can I do that? Fanny Cheng was adamant. He had to leave with Xia Jingyu first, not only to ensure her safety, but also for his own selfish reasons. If they entered first, and there was no one else around, he could use the danger as an excuse to leave with Xia Jingyu. If there were more people around, the probability of Xia Jingyu teaming up with others would be higher. Xia Jingyu's hatred for him was written all over her face, and he knew it. Therefore, no matter what, he had to leave with Xia Jingyu first and quickly take her away from the crowd, leaving her no choice but to follow him. It had to be said that his wishful thinking was very good. However, young Miss Song was an extremely stubborn person. If he didn't let her go, she would go anyway. Humph! Young Miss Song stomped her feet, and a blue light shot out from her eyes. That light contained a trace of the space domain. Fanny Cheng, who was originally in front of them, was pushed into the crack by the space domain. However, the dense airflow in the crack only allowed yin and yang to pass together. He alone was immediately sent back. Fanny Cheng was afraid of young Miss Song, so he did not dare to make a move. He could only grab Xia Jingyu, who was not far away, and fiercely grab her. He tried to grab her through the air and forcibly take her away. Xia Jingyu exclaimed, How dare you? Fanny Cheng did not treat her as a partner, but as his private property. Chapter 31:47. However, the Mortal Attraction City was blessed with the ability to control power. No matter how much Xia Jingyu tried to resist, it was of no use. Swoosh! Xia Jingyu was instantly pulled over. Fanny Cheng took the opportunity to lean back, wanting to bring Xia Jingyu into the dense air current. Right at that moment, Su Yu calmly pointed his finger. The bald man's pocket suddenly fell off and flew into Fanny Cheng's arms. Ah! With an angry cry, Xia Jingyu and Fanny Cheng both fell into the dense air current. Young Miss Song stomped her feet in annoyance. They got ahead of us. Damn it. Let's go. She brought Su Yu and the bald man with her, and immediately entered. However, before Su Yu could even get close, he was expelled. Only young Miss Song and the bald man entered. Because there were 2 men and 1 woman, one of the men had to be excluded. However, Su Yu was not in a hurry. He stood outside the crack. The dense airflow trembled again, and a graceful woman fell out of it. She was Xia Jingyu. She had been expelled by the dense air current and returned to the altar. She looked around in surprise and couldn't help but look at her own body. She was a little confused. Why was she excluded? Logically speaking, shouldn't she and Mortal Attraction City enter together? Why was she excluded when Fanny Cheng succeeded? How strange. Fairy, if you lack a partner, why don't you count me in? Su Yu said. Xia Jingyu looked up and stared at the black-robed Su Yu. She asked in surprise, You were excluded too? After a pause, Xia Jingyu said, It's reasonable. Young Miss Song was the only one who naively treated Su Yu as a pet and ignored his gender. It was reasonable for her to be excluded. Su Yu smiled. That's right. We are all in the same boat. Xia Jingyu looked at Su Yu quietly. Her eyes were deep and full of wisdom. The reason I was excluded must have something to do with you, right? She had always wondered why she had been ostracized, and Su Yu's half-joking words had caused her to become suspicious. Su Yu did not explain, but continued, "So, are you willing to form a team with me and enter?" He didn't deny it, which meant he admitted it. Xia Jingyu was quite sure of this, so she couldn't help but look at Su Yu. Okay. She stood shoulder to shoulder with Su Yu, facing the dense air current as they walked toward it. Before entering, Xia Jingyu asked, "How did you do it?" No one can change the rules of the sinkhole, Empyrean Lord's tomb. Even the arrival of the sacred mountain son of heaven might not be able to change the restriction of yin and yang integration. Su Yu laughed. "Of course I didn't change the rules. I just replaced the beautiful woman beside Fan Yinsheng with a female demonic beast." Ugh! Xia Jingyu's footsteps suddenly stopped. Ew! After that, she couldn't help but smile. Her smile, which he hadn't seen for a long time, was elegant and refined. It was like the first time he had seen her, and it made Su Yu's heart flutter. He couldn't calm down for a long time. "Aren't you too good at pranking people?" Xia Jingyu covered her mouth and laughed. The rules of the tomb did not restrict the races. Male Homo evolutus and female demonic beasts could be considered as yin and yang entering together. However, the mortal attraction city might even have the intention to kill at this moment. Su Yu looked at Xia Jingyu and said in a gentle voice, "You are in trouble, so how can I not care about you?" After all, she was once a beautiful woman, and he had once touched her heart. Xia Jingyu's mind was sharp, and she immediately noticed the strange look in his eyes under the black robe. Her smile disappeared abruptly, and she regained her usual indifference. Expressionless, she said, "Between you and I," before she could finish her sentence. Su Yu interrupted her and added what she wanted to say. "Let's keep our distance." This was what Xia Jingyu wanted to say, and it was also what Su Yu wanted to say. Now that he had the body of Prince Mirrorflower, he really had to keep his distance. Xia Jingyu was startled, and she looked at Su Yu in surprise. She had an inexplicable feeling that this man had some sort of tacit understanding with her. "All right," Xia Jingyu said with a nod. Then, the two of them entered the mist side by side. This time, neither of them was ostracized, and they easily entered the tomb of the sinkhole Empyrean Lord. As soon as his feet touched the ground, he heard a loud choral before he even opened his eyes. When he opened his eyes, he saw that the sky was black and white. An eye-like sun, black and white, hung at the top of the firmament, overlooking the endless earth. The earth was full of dead, grotesquely shaped ancient trees. The lake in the distance was also lifeless, and there was not the slightest ripple. The whole world gave off an oppressive feeling of death. Under a crooked tree, Fanny Ching and Miss Song were in a standoff. They were both scolding each other, and neither was willing to give in to the other. "Give me an explanation. Did you do this?" Fanny Ching was holding a demonic beast bag, and he could not suppress his anger. Miss Song was not someone who would suffer grievances. She flew into a rage. "I wanted to ask you, why is my three-headed black dragon in your hands? Did you steal it?" Fanny Ching was furious. He had been scheming to bring Xia Jingyu to explore alone, so that it would be more convenient for him. In the end, everything was ruined by a demonic beast, and this demonic beast belonged to Miss Song. With the standoff between the two of them, only a ghost would believe that she did not do it. Suddenly, the appearance of Su Yu and Xia Jingyu attracted the attention of both sides. Miss Song, who was in a fit of anger, was furious when she saw them. "Great! I just left, and you're already entangled with this woman. And you even passed through the dense air currents together. You too." The veins on Su Yu's forehead were twitching. "Don't you think you should blame yourself for bringing two men through the dense air currents?" "Huh?" Miss Song's eyes widened, and she said, Aren't you a protective beast? Why is there a gender restriction?" In the whole world, Miss Song was probably the only one who did not know about this. Su Yu rubbed the space between his brows and said, "I don't know why, but I feel that this expedition is going to be extraordinarily difficult. With such a master, he was afraid that he would be very worried along the way." "Aha, about that. Look at the sky here. It's so big." Little Miss Song changed the topic with ease and laughed. Su Yu could not be bothered with her, and he looked at Xia Jingyu. who was beside him. "Fairy, what do you plan to do?" Before she could answer, Fanny Ching hurriedly left the 3 black dragons behind and ran over. He asked with concern, "Fairy Xia, are you all right?" He tried to hold Xia Jingyu's hands, and he greeted her with skin-to-skin contact. Xia Jingyu took a step back and said, "I'm fine." Fan Yicheng glared at Su Yu, who was beside him, and shouted, "Get lost." Then he tried to hold Xia Jingyu's hands again and said, "I know a secret place, and there might be amazing treasures there. Let's go first, and don't let anyone get to it before us." However, Xia Jingyu hid behind Su Yu and said, "I'm sorry. I'm going with this young man, so please help yourself." In fact, she did not want to be with anyone, including this suspicious black-robed man. She had no choice but to do this in order to avoid Fanny Cheng. Chapter 31:48. Fanny Cheng's face darkened. He had exhausted all his means, but he still couldn't get what he wanted. He could not help but raise his eyes and stare coldly at Su Yu. "Are you sure you want to team up with Xia, Fairy?" The threat in his words could not be more obvious. Su Yu looked at Miss Song. "Cough, cough. I'll have to ask my master's opinion." Actually, he did not need to ask to know that with Miss Song's personality, she would never admit defeat to Fanny Cheng. Indeed, Miss Song put her hands on her hips and laughed. "Do you still need to ask? Since you came in together, you are naturally part of the same team." Fanny Cheng's eyes turned cold. "Miss Song, don't play with fire. The tomb of the ultimate emperor is very dangerous." What he meant was that this place could easily be life-threatening if she insisted on becoming Fanny Cheng's enemy. "I'm not afraid." Miss Song was not someone who feared others. She said mockingly, "Mr. Fan, you should just stay with your mother demonic beast." You." Fanny Cheng was furious. Just as he was about to start a fight, Su Yu, the bald man, and Xia Jingyu all stepped forward. Miss Song said proudly, 4 against 1. "Mr. Fan, if I borrow you, this place is very dangerous." Fanny Cheng stared at all of them angrily. Finally, he glared at Su Yu and left angrily. In fact, he hated Miss Song the most. Without her arrogant and domineering protection, how would Su Yu dare to take Xia Jingyu? However, Miss Song had a background that he feared, while Su Yu did not. Miss Song revealed a victorious smile and could not stop giggling. However, when she saw Xia Jingyu, she immediately became unhappy. She curled her lips and asked, "Tell me, how did you manage to hook up with my protective beast?" Xia Jingyu shook her head lightly. "I'm leaving." She did not want to argue with Miss Song, who was hostile to her. Since Fanny Cheng had left, there was no need to stay. Su Yu cast a meaningful look in the direction that Fan Sheng had left in. After thinking for a moment, he said to Miss Song, "Master, you went through a lot of trouble to save Xia Fairy, but she didn't even say a word of thanks. She just left like that. Did she look down on you?" If Su Yu's guess was correct, the Mortal Attraction City had not really left. How could he not see that Xia Jingyu had been forced to team up with Su Yu? Once he left, she would automatically leave Miss Song's team. Therefore, it was highly likely that Mortal Luring City had pretended to leave and was actually waiting for Xia Jingyu to be alone again. How could Su Yu let him have his way? However, he understood that no matter if he tried to persuade Xia Jingyu to stay or if he tried to persuade young Miss Song to stay, neither of them would succeed. Thus, he could only play the role of a villain to sow discord. Sure enough, little Miss Song could endure anything, but she couldn't endure being taken advantage of. She stared at Xia Jingyu with an unfriendly gaze, crossed her arms in front of her chest, and snorted, "My protective beast is right. If you leave just like that, wouldn't I be helping you fight against Mortal Attraction City for nothing?" Xia Jingyu did not like to owe people favors. Hearing this, he stopped and said, "What do you want?" Young Miss Song rubbed her nose and sized her up. "I see that your abilities are barely passable. Help me enter the 3rd treasure area, and we'll call it even." Not only did Mortal Attraction City have the treasure map, but young Miss Song, whose status was not inferior to his, also had it. Xia Jingyu had a look of surprise on her face. "The 3rd treasure area? Are you sure?" She looked around at the 4 of them. The graves of the Ultimate Ruins Divine Emperors were divided into 6 levels. The place they were at was considered the 1st treasure area. In the past, it was frequented by people, so there were no more treasures to speak of. Going deeper, it was the second, third, and sixth treasure area. It was said that in the area of the second treasure area, powerful creatures of the late stage of the Great Saint Realm were everywhere. They were ferocious and extremely repulsive to foreign creatures. As for the third treasure area, it was even more dangerous. It was said that there might be creatures of the peak of the Great Saint Realm, comparable to a realm one human king. If one ran into one, there was basically no chance of survival, unless one was extremely powerful and had reached the peak of a certain race, such as a human king. Young Miss Song wanted to barge into the third treasure area with just the four of them and a few protective beasts. It was too dangerous. Don't worry, it's only at the edge of the third treasure area. Young Miss Song said embarrassedly. No matter how arrogant she was, she would not dare to barge into that place. Xia Jingyu pondered. I advise you to give up. Even the edge of the third treasure area is filled with great danger. The beasts of the third treasure area are not only in the area, they might spread out. If we are unlucky enough to meet them, she still did not understand young Miss Song's personality. She would do things that she was not allowed to do. I really have to go. Young Miss Song snorted. I don't believe that I, Song Jiai, will have such bad luck. Reality proved that her luck was really bad. The group had just chosen a direction and had only taken a few steps when the ground in front of them was blocked by a canyon. The depths of the canyon were pitch black. Nothing could be seen, only the whistling of the chilly wind. Young Miss Song, please step back. Let me test it. The bald young man took out a Tao artifact, activated it, and threw it over. In the end, just as the Tao artifact crossed the edge of the cliff, it immediately shook as if it had been attacked. Then, it shattered with a bang. The bald young man picked up the fragment and observed it on the spot. After a while, he said, the chilly wind above the canyon has accumulated all year round, forming a chilly wind domain. It is impossible to pass through, and it is easy to be attacked. After a pause, he said, however, the domain's power is limited. It is within our tolerance. He took out 4 purplish gold armors that he had prepared, one for each person. As long as it is activated, the armor can resist the chilly wind domain. It could be seen that young Miss Song and her companions were relatively cautious. No matter how arrogant they were outside, they were especially careful in the sinkhole Emperor's Tomb. I'll go first. The bald young man walked to the front. He turned back and said, young Miss Song, please pay attention to my changes. If anything happens to me, retreat in time. Young Miss Song followed behind with a solemn expression. Xia Jingyu closed her eyes. After calculating their fates, she stepped out safely. Suyu looked thoughtfully at the bottomless abyss under his feet. He hesitated for a moment before stepping out. As soon as they stepped into the air above the cliff, they immediately felt the chilly wind attack. They were both powerful and extremely sharp. As they scraped against the purplish gold armor, a cracking sound could be heard. Fine cracks appeared one after another. However, the cracks were still tolerable. The bald young man said calmly, don't worry, we can cross it safely. When they reached the center of the canyon, the cracks were even more obvious. However, as the bald young man had said, they could not damage the foundation of the armor, so crossing it was not a problem. Chapter 31:49. Soon, they had crossed more than half of the canyon. In less than 1/10 of the distance, they would reach the shore safely. Most of their armor was intact, so it would be no problem for them to survive. But at that moment, a surprising scene appeared. A low roar suddenly came from the pitch-black abyss below. A mass of chilly wind flew out from the deepest part of the abyss, forming 5 claws as it viciously clawed at them. The chilly wind was 10 times stronger than ordinary chilly wind. Their armor would not be of any use. The bald youth's expression changed slightly as he hurriedly said, run. He turned around, grabbed Miss Song's shoulders, carried her on his shoulders, and ran towards the shore not far away. Xia Jingyu frowned and murmured, the ultimate Emperor's Tomb is indeed not an ordinary place. Before crossing the canyon, she had secretly calculated the fate of this trip, and the result was extremely smooth. But the reality was exactly the opposite. The root of the problem was that the powerful aura of the Ultimate Emperor's tomb interfered with her fate prediction. But she did not have time to speculate. In a flash, Xia Jingyu unleashed her hidden cultivation at the critical moment, bursting forth with the powerful cultivation of a middle-stage great saint. Her speed suddenly multiplied, and in an instant, she surpassed the bald youth and Miss Song, taking the lead. Suyu was secretly amazed as he watched. Back when Suyu was being hunted by the Xiaoyao prince, Xia Jingyu didn't hesitate to sacrifice her breakthrough opportunity in order to save him. Unexpectedly, Xia Jingyu's cultivation continued to rise, reaching the middle stage great saint level. Her cultivation was even much higher than Suyu's. But even if Xia Jingyu revealed her true cultivation in time, she still could not escape the sudden chilly wind. A gust of Yin wind wrapped around the five fingers, and in an instant, it caught the few people who were flying in the sky. With just a pinch, they would all be crushed. Suyu remained calm, secretly activating the space domain. Space flickered, and the few of them instantly teleported out of the encirclement of the chilly wind. Then, they appeared outside of the five fingers. In fact, it was not that Suyu's space domain had not exerted its power. It was just that he did not want to expose too much. Otherwise, he could have teleported to the safe shore in one breath. The few of them teleported away from the chilly wind and were slightly stunned, thinking that the chilly wind had grabbed the wrong area. "Run! What are you waiting for?" Little Song hammered the bald youth's head. The latter came to a realization and immediately rushed to the shore. Xia Jingyu was also startled, but she had no time to think as she rushed towards the shore. Suyu had a terrified look on his face as he shouted from behind, "Wait for me! Don't leave me behind!" Little Song turned her head to look and was so angry that her nose became crooked. "What kind of protective beast is this? What's the point of me bringing you here?" He had used up all the energy in her tank and taken away her little cauldron. In the end, he had not been able to use it at all. She had spared no expense to create this mascot. Very soon, little Miss Song did not have the energy to continue arguing. This was because after the five-fingered Yin wind missed its target, it pounced towards her again. Seeing this, the few of them ran for their lives. Finally, just as they were about to reach the other side of the river, an eerie wind blew and enveloped them. Fortunately, they were not too far from the shore. Braving the incomparably terrifying Yin wind, they forcibly crossed over. There was a muffled sound. The four of them safely stepped onto the hard ground on the other side of the river. Correspondingly, the armor on their bodies suffered the counterattack of the chilly wind, and finally, with a crack, it all shattered into pieces, turning into pieces that fell all over the ground. Whoosh! The bald youth was sweating profusely. Little Miss Song's face was slightly pale. She wiped the cold sweat off her forehead and looked at the long cliff behind her. She shuddered. As expected of the human emperor's tomb, it is much more terrifying than the records. Then, she regained her confidence and said, "Fortunately, we managed to cross over. Next, let us happily pick up the treasures." However, Xia Jingyu looked ahead quietly, her eyes extremely serious. "I think perhaps we have only just begun." Little Miss Song immediately raised her eyebrows unhappily. "Why are you making such sarcastic remarks?" Unexpectedly, the moment she turned around, her pupils shrank fiercely. She saw that in front of her, there was another boundless canyon. The Yin wind within it was even more intense. No, not just one. Through her powerful senses, there were countless similar canyons in the distance. Roughly sensing, there were at least 10,000 of them. They had only crossed one of them. However, just one of them almost took their lives. Little Miss Song's legs turned to jelly. She sat on the ground and muttered to herself, Is this going to kill us?" There was no way they could cross such a perilous place. The bald youth was also extremely shocked. How is this possible? In the records, this area of the sixth treasure trove is only inhabited by ferocious beasts. When were there any records of so many dangerous canyons? Only Xia Jingyu said calmly, "The Ultimate Emperor's tomb is one of the most mysterious relics of the nine-star civilization. It is normal for it to change in an instant. Using the records of the past as evidence is not reliable. Little Miss Song swept a glance over. Hindsight, she once again looked at the endless cliffs in front of her, her eyes filled with despair. How do we cross over? Xia Jingyu said calmly. Miss Song, why are you sighing? Among your people, isn't there someone who has mastered the space domain? She glanced at Su Yu from the corner of her eyes. It seemed like the others had not realized it, but she had keenly sensed that the reason they had been able to escape from the chilly wind was because someone had used the space domain. Little Miss Song was slightly shocked. She could not help but look at Su Yu. Is she talking about you? Among the four of them, Xia Jingyu had never heard of the space domain. She and the bald youth knew each other very well. The only possibility was Su Yu, no, Su Ergu. Su Yu looked confused. Space domain? Isn't that a secret technique that only the Space Saint tribe has mastered? Master, do I look like someone from the Space Saint tribe? Little Miss Song looked at Su Yu for a moment, then shook her head. You don't look like one at all. She glanced at Xia Jingyu, her face full of mockery. Really, what kind of dream is this? If Su Yu was from the Space Saint tribe, would he have become her protective beast? What kind of brain is this? Little Miss Song looked ahead. After a moment of silence, she clenched her teeth. Fine. In order to complete the mission, I will go all out. She opened her small mouth and spat out a thumb-sized, 7-colored feather fan. The 7-colored feather fan grew with the wind, and soon it was as tall as her. I'm going to lose another treasure. Little Miss Song looked pained. Su Yu looked at the 7-colored feather fan, and his expression changed slightly. The grade of the fan was not much lower than the abandoned common people cauldron. Just who was this Little Miss Song? Why did her family have so many prehistoric treasures? In Tianjin,